I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Oh, I've got some time left. I have some cards here about the event. I'll leave them. Could I leave them on the thing here, or should give them to you?
Sure.
Okay. City planner will handle it.
First name is Pather, Peadar. Last name is Dalton, Dalton. 460 La Quinta Lane, Sonoma, California, 95476. I just wanted to share I did practice this afternoon time-wise. I wanted to share a couple of excerpts from the article written by Pastor Kern a couple of weeks ago on homelessness in our city, in our community. That was beautifully written and very unbiased. Homelessness, entitled Homelessness in All of Our Problem. I'm actually here as a liaison person for Sonoma Valley Interfaith Ministerial Association, been part of it for the last 17 years and former president of that organization, Rabbi Steve being the current president. Why has homelessness become such a hot-button issue in Sonoma, and whose job is it to fix it? This is by Pastor Reverend Kern of First Congregational Church. What is so vexing about this issue is that in most cases, homelessness is not a direct result of something you personally did or didn't do. Homelessness and its attendant consequences are symptomatic of larger issues at play. I am jumping to various paragraphs. Two of the many myths about people who are homeless are either they do not want to work or they cannot hold a job because there's something wrong with them. That is simply not the case. The majority of homeless people in Sonoma Valley are employed, often with multiple low-paying jobs that do not afford access to even the most modest accommodation in our overly inflated housing market. People who live without permanent shelter are, in reality, doing the very best they can. Friends of Sonoma Valley, homelessness should make us uncomfortable. It should make us so uncomfortable that we do insist directing abundant civic and private resources of all kinds toward creating lasting and meaningful solutions. And fast forwarding, we must look homelessness square in the face and recognize the humanity behind the suffering. While we may not be personally or directly responsible for the problem of homelessness, resolving the issue in any meaningful way is going to take serious, concerted effort. And we finish with the following words from our good pastor from the First Congregational Church. Together we all own what is right with this world as well as what is wrong with it. We are a loving community here in Sonoma, amen to that, and we share a bedrock belief that all people deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. Sonomans are resilient and brave. Let there be no doubt that we are capable of making headway in alleviating the misery of homelessness, and let us do so in a way that reflects dignity and the best of who we are as a community. Amen. Thank you, Council people.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to make a public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Are there any meeting dedications? No. And now we'll move on to presentations. Item 3.1, the city manager will introduce our new staff.
Thank you, Mayor Harrington, members of the council. I'm going to start off with David Storr, and well, actually, let me figure the order here. We have two staff to introduce to you tonight. The first is a new member of our Public Works team, and I'd like to have Colleen Ferguson, our Public Works Director, introduce her new staff member.
Okay, and I think we have a slide. All right. Mayor and members of the council, I'm delighted to introduce Michelle Fajardo, our new Public Works Administrative and Project Manager. One of the things we talk about a lot is her 11 years of experience with the County of Sonoma, where she
I'm sorry, Colleen, do you mind having her come up with you? Why don't you have her come stand up next to you and
thank you.
While you're singing her accolades, and we'll thank you.
This is Michelle, and so I'm appreciating her 11 years of experience delivering bridge and other kinds of projects for the county, including in the Sonoma area. So she lives in the county and knows Sonoma well enough from her work with the County of Sonoma, and knows Caltrans and the federal highway system and all that well enough that it's a real asset for our projects, as well as her organization skills and all the other things that I've gotten to know just in the week or so that we've been working together so far. She has a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, which is also really helpful, and and something I really respect, a land surveyor in training certificate, which is not easy to get. It's a lot of studying and field work and passing a really hard test. So, and then she's also had a real estate license. Just an amazing package to come here and help the Public Works Department deliver projects for the community and keep ourselves organized and in good shape administratively. So welcome, Michelle.
Welcome.
Welcome, yeah. This gentleman's name is not David and it's not Christina, which was one of the preconditions that we had in having Travis join us at the city. So to my right, this is a woohoo moment because Travis is the city's first sustainability coordinator. So way to go, City of Sonoma. And again, to my right, Travis has more degrees than I've had hot dinners. He's got a master's in environmental policy from the University of Maryland. The Unity College is where you got your bachelor's, right? And then he also has a PhD from George Washington in environmental and natural resources policy. So we have a great policy guy on our books, which is really kind of cool. He's got extensive experience in speaking not only locally, but in state and internationally, so on the topics of sustainability. So we're excited to have he and his wife join our community in 2017. Yep. Amelia, and she's a doctor over at the hospital, I believe. Yeah. Right. Yes. So please welcome Travis.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Welcome to you both. And now on to item 3.2, a very exciting item. It's the City of Sonoma Award of the, I'll let Kathy Gabriola take this over.
Thank you, Mayor Harrington. I'd like to introduce Chris Godley, who's a Director of Emergency Management for Sonoma County, and Jeff Duvall, who's the Assistant Director. And I will let them describe the award and why we are receiving this. So thank you both for coming here and making this presentation.
Well, absolutely. Thank you for making time for us this evening. As the county's Director of Emergency Management, it's a challenging job. 2019's been busy. You've certainly been through your experiences. What's challenging for the most part, though, is shifting our culture, our community. And here in Sonoma, we've seen that. So tonight we're here to present the city, the entire city, with the Pete Peterka Award for Emergency Management Excellence. The Peterka Award is named after Louis Pete Peterka, who passed away just 2 weeks ago. Pete was a veteran of World War II, Korea, Vietnam. He established the County Sheriff's Search and Rescue Team, as well as was the founder of the County Office of Emergency Services at the time. Pete was a force in the world. He moved the ball, as we call it. And so the award is given to individuals, for the most part, who move the ball in emergency management, traditionally in emergency preparedness. That is not just responding to the disaster du jour, but actually taking a step forward when things are calm and trying to make a change in how well our neighborhoods and communities are prepared. And so to that end, this evening, we're very pleased to bring the Peterka Award here to the city of Sonoma, because in 2019, your city went through it. You saw the fire. You dealt with PG&E. But more importantly, your city leadership stepped up. You wanted to make an investment in the community, taking the results and the lessons learned from 2017 and making sure that the residents of Sonoma were well prepared for whatever may come. And we saw some of that benefit actually just last October as PG&E turned off the power. There were no traffic lights, etc. And as the fire came down from the north of the county, we were very concerned about a potential fire here in this Sonoma Valley area. But the city was standing strong. They'd made a lot of preparations and planning, training, and exercising the staff. And at one point, being the only shelter that the city manager had the foresight to force the county to put generator onto, but wasn't occupied. We were looking at as basically a strategic reserve for sheltering residents should we have a more significant evacuation of the city of Santa Rosa, or if we needed to evacuate folks from the unincorporated areas of Sonoma Valley. So to that end, I can tell you, I wish all the cities in Sonoma County were as aggressive as the city of Sonoma, that the leadership was dedicated to that mission, that they understand the first function of government is to really protect ourselves as residents. That's why we come together. And so I'm just grateful that you've got the opportunity to receive some acknowledgement that your efforts are not only well understood by the county government, but they're seen by other cities as where they should be. Not just in terms of executing plans and training and arranging for logistics, but as a mindset that this is an issue on the front burner of city government all the time, and it's really paying off. Your residents are among the most prepared now in the county, and I just want to thank you for your leadership in this area. So we'd like to present the award to the City of Sonoma for your outstanding commitment to emergency management in the Sonoma County / operational area.
Thank you very much.
Somebody has to take this. by the
Yes, so
way.
just, Mayor Harrington, I would like to invite up the city staff that have been involved in this with the city council and collectively to receive this award. I do want to just say thank you to Chris Godley and Judd Duvall, the team that under Chris's leadership that has been put in place in the last 2 years is truly top drawer. And so our ability to come together is only as strong as we are all together. And the county is so much stronger. And speaking of leadership and mindset, so collectively we are moving forward and trying to make our communities as safe as possible. I do just want to thank our team, the council, for your support financially, policy-wise, with the time that we have put into preparing since about March and April of last year for the PSPS, and our city staff team, including consultants, contractors. It's taken bringing in some additional resources to be able to do some of the work that we've done, but just very proud of overall where we are, and actually honored and humbled for all of us to receive this award. So if we can maybe take a collective picture and accept it together. And Mayor Harrington, maybe just one other comment. Again, there's a lot of the other supporters in this. Mark Bodenhammer from the Chamber that did a lot of, helped us our town halls and outreach to the business community, and John Gurney from the Community Center that did the outreach with our charging center and helped staff that, and the partnership we have with Bob Taylor and KSVY helping do some of the communication. So again, it takes a government, it takes nonprofits, and it takes everyone working together. So thank you.
Thank you all. And now on to item 3.3, Celebrate Sonoma. And Celebrate Sonoma, to remind you, is a program we started this year to celebrate the people that make up the fabric of Sonoma. And what we wanted to do close to the holidays is each council member and staff who wanted to celebrate the people who allow us to do these roles. And so many people have said, thanked us for what we do, but really it's the people who allow us to be away from home and keep our lives running and still love us and let us have a family and a personal life that make it possible. And so tonight we'll be honoring those people. And I will start. I will start with someone who I know does not want this award, but at any rate, I will bring him forward, Richard Harrington, my father.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So,
Go ahead and read it.
it says, Richard Harrington, this is your day, December 16th, 2019, in the city of Sonoma.
Right.
And, so, Richard Harrington. I will just say, when my children were very little, I thought about giving up. I thought, I can't possibly do all the things I dreamed about doing and still be a good parent. And my dad said, I got it covered. And ever since that time until today, my dad has had it covered. Next up is Madeline Agrimonti.
Okay, I've been married 51 years. There's not much more I can say or do. But I think this is a wonderful gesture. My husband is home baking right now for Christmas. Everybody accepts something special from Rich Agrimonti. I am known as the saint in Sonoma. I won't expose why, being married to Rich. And you know what? He's an amazing person. There are only two things he really cares about, me and our son. He tells me, tell people I'm not you. I don't make sandwiches for anybody. I don't deliver furniture. So that's the kind of marriage we have. And if I wanted to be an astronaut next year, he'd say, let's see how we can do that. That's exactly the kind of guy he is. He's always been by my side. I hope he's pulled himself away from the cookies baking to watch this. But it's just really interesting. And I think the secret to our marriage is when I get crazy and I want to do 10 things at once, he'll just look at me and say, well, if it's too hard for you to handle, just quit. That's not something I understand. So he knows exactly how I work. And this is a wonderful gesture. Thank you. And I have a wonderful husband. Thank you. Thanks, Rich, wherever you are. Put down that baking thing. That's how much I know. Put down that baking thing.
And now on to Councilmember Cook.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Harrington, for allowing this tonight. I think it's very important. We're never able to we don't talk about our personal lives. We're in a small town, so everybody knows who we are and how many children we have. And, I'm dedicating today to my wife, Kirsten Cook. I wish she could be here tonight, but she's watching our 4 children. So getting a babysitter is difficult on a lot of Mondays. But I met Kirsten, the love of my life. She's given me great direction, and I have the 4 beautifulest children, and just knowing that she's there. And every Monday night when I come home and I'm mad about votes or talking about city business and people calling me, she's always accepted it, and she's never once told me, don't take that call. She's always encouraged it, and I think that that's why she's so special. She's been at Park Point for years helping people train. She's got me looking pretty good, right? We're working on that, but I just want to thank my wife and let her know that I love her and I love all of my 4 children. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Harvey.
I guess I'll go down. You have to stand up.
Oh, okay.
Compete with Madeline and Rich's 50 years of marriage, but we'll get there eventually. 51. How dare I? So I definitely wanted to nominate my wife Lily for this award, and I just appreciate all the nights that I'm not able to be around and all the things that I have to do, and you're always accepting and appreciative. You always tell me when the suit doesn't match and I look bad. So that's always really appreciated. Or if I'm not, holding the right face at a moment, or if I'm getting too bored, you make sure I'm standing at attention. So you always take me to that extra next level, and I appreciate it every single day. So I love you, and thank you. And this is your day now, and it says it right there, so it's official. Nobody can deny it, and there we are.
Councilmember Hundley.
Well, unfortunately, my two special people, one person and one creature could not be here tonight. One is in the car and the other one does not know how to drive. But I am thanking my husband Sean and our dog, our 3-year-old shepherd mix, both of whom came into my life while I've been on the council for the last 5 years. And when I first met Sean, he was living in Santa Rosa, and I think probably on our third or fourth date, I told him that if it was going to work out, he was going to have to come to Sonoma because I wasn't leaving. So he did. And if any of you were watching our meetings last, I guess 2 Decembers ago, that was where it was my last night as mayor that he ended up proposing right there. And has been an extremely important source of support. And he actually finds this all really interesting, which is kind of nice because I get to talk about it more than I probably could otherwise. But he now knows that he is there to listen to me talk about it, but I don't actually want to hear his opinions on it because because that's not his role. But I am very thankful for both Sean and my unofficial emotional support bee, Sam, and so I am very pleased I get a chance to thank them today.
And now our city manager, Kathy Capriola.
Ask my husband, Mark Jewell, to come up. I'm going to have my back to everyone. So Mark and I have been married over 20 years, and I'm not sure he knew what he was in for when he married me early in my public service career and then becoming city manager. But I wanted to dedicate this day to you, hon, and say thank you for your love and support. As I do this job, I tend to live in my job a lot, and especially in our EOC lately. And Mark takes care of our 3 kids and works part-time from home and he's my rock. He's my pillar. So thank you.
Oh, before we move on to our next honoree, I just wanted to say on behalf of the city of Sonoma also, thank you very much, Mark, and we appreciate all that your wife does, and we know that you guys are a team, so thank you. Now on to our finance director, Sue Casey. And other titles. Sue has other titles also.
I have a lot of titles. So this is Jerry Casey Day. And so, Jer, I just wanted to thank you for your patience and understanding, for standing by and encouraging me when the going got really tough, for always waiting up for me until I get home and having dinner ready, no matter what hour I arrive, and it's usually bacon and eggs that I want because that's all that sounds good at that hour. Thanks also for always doing the dishes, for making the bed, and for tolerating Hallmark movies around the holidays. You're an incredible and extraordinary husband, father, puppy dad, and friend. And I'm so lucky to share the last amazing 37 years with you. I love and appreciate you more than you can know.
Now our city clerk, Rebecca Barr.
So I am dedicating this day to my husband, Derek Barr. It says it right here, it's Derek Barr Day. And I have to say, my husband, we've been together almost 16 years, and he didn't know he was going to have a career in public service. He is always there, like Sue's husband. He's always there to, when I get home, to listen to what I have to say, whether it's yelling, lengthy, whatever it is. And it's amazing to me how much you've learned and how you will make suggestions that I don't think about. And again, I didn't know you were going to have a public service career, neither did you. But I will say, in your job, I think you understand a lot of what I go through because you deal with a lot of other cities in your doing construction. And But I just want to thank you so much, and I love you, and I don't know if I get to say it enough, and I know I wear you out.
I love you too.
And because of that, you also get an energy drink.
Now you can make it through your day. Now I'd like to bring up Kathy Lanning. Kathy, I don't want to get your title wrong. I think of you as HR director, but I know it's like administrative services director, manager.
Well, I didn't know I was supposed to prepare something to speak. I thought we were just going to hand it to him and get out of here. But Todd, too, has to, yeah, exactly, take it. Here you go. He has to put up with a lot with us being gone, and it's been almost 32 years we've been together. The last 26 of them I've been with the city, and my son was 4 weeks old, so he's grown up with the city. But I want to thank him and let him know that this is Todd Lanning Day, but then every day is Todd Lanning Day.
Aww.
So, thank you.
And last but not least, a newer member of our staff, Erica Jacobs.
Sure, son. Well, my partner and fiance, Tom Paisley, can't be here tonight. He's at home in Petaluma with our collective 3 tweener children. And that is how I've been able to come and do this amazing job at the City of Sonoma. I'm so happy to be here on this team. And after I started working here in August, it wasn't very much long later that we had the Wild Ride of October and several PSPS events, and spending some time away from my family. But knowing that I have Tom at home with my kids is how I can do this job. So I'm very grateful. And I'm going to go home and give him his award that tells him it's Tom Paisley Day.
Thank you, everyone. It was such a treat to see your families and hear a little bit about your lives also. And thank you to the family members who have done so much to support all of us.
Maybe Mayor Harrington, I know we're going to move on to the council reorganization, but just for folks that did come, if you wait a little longer, we've got cake and we can, we'd love to have you stay for that reception we'll have in a few minutes too. So turning back to
thank
you,
you.
Mayor Harrington.
So now, item 4.1 is city council reorganization. Every year we select a new mayor, and I have been the mayor for 2019, and tonight we will pick a new mayor and vice mayor. So that is item 4.1. And I guess we're starting with a recognition of the outgoing mayor. That's me, Vice Mayor Harvey.
Well, Madam Mayor, which I'm excited to call you for, I guess, the last time. It's been a wonderful year working with you at the City Council, and my first year on the council. It's been wonderful getting to know you, to get to know you as a colleague, and to also know you as a friend. And I really appreciated your leadership. I think this year was one of the more productive years that the City Council has had. There was a lot of things that were kind of in the backlog, and we got fantastic things accomplished. We pushed through and got minimum wage done. We got tasting room ordinance passed. We finished our cannabis ordinance. We achieved so many things for working class people by getting our affordable housing trust fund done as well, and now finally our impact fees. And I think it's really takes strong leadership to push through all of that. It takes a lot of late nights. It takes a lot of thought. It takes a lot of stress. And through knowing you, I've seen how much that is. And I appreciate all the work that you put in and all the time that you put in and the deep thought that I know you put into every decision that you made here before City Council. And I think the city appreciates it. And I know your other colleagues appreciate it too. And we couldn't ask for a better mayor. And you showed us what leadership really is, and how to always stick to what you know is right and fight for it. And I'm honored to know you, and I'm honored to present this to you, which is your gavel for life. Should we stand up?
All right.
Do we stand up? Did we do that? Okay.
We can.
I've never done this before, so you know. So we've got the gavel for life. I don't know if it comes off, so it's going to be tough if you want to. Take it out. There we go. There you go.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to say that I have gotten so much from the city of Sonoma in every aspect of things I care about. So many people have cared about my kids here, taken interest in them, helped them grow and develop. So many people have taken an interest in me. When I said I wanted to run for the city council, Ken Brown emailed 20 people and introduced me around, and we.
I did it.
And I met one of my now best friends because of that. And just everything that you want to do in this town, I really feel like people wholeheartedly support you doing that. And that is really a beautiful thing, a place to live where people want to see you do well, want to see your family do well, encourage you in everything you do. And it's a small town, and there are, it's hard to be anonymous here anyway. There are a few drawbacks about living here, but overall, I think this is what, this is what people need to feel fulfilled living in a town like this with so much community. So it has been my absolute honor to be the mayor of this town. All the time I've spent here, I've tried to really make sure that our town can continue to have a diversity of people living here and that other people can experience the same thing that I've experienced here. But I've made the best friends of my life living in this town and watched my children grow up, and my dad lives here. I just think it's the most wonderful place in the world. So to be the mayor of this town really is truly an honor, and it's something I will value my entire life. So thank you very much.
Well, I think it's you. You have to ask for nominations.
No.
No. Oh, okay. So are there comments from other council members for Mayor Harrington? Councilmember Hundley?
I thought that there was a part for us, and I think there's one for the public too. It has been a wonderful year this year, and we've gotten so many things across the finish line, and it has just been a joy having you as our mayor this year. And I appreciate all of the work. It is not an easy job, volunteer job to have, and I'm very thankful for your time and energy that you have given the city this year. And I look forward to working with you more next year as co-council members.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Cook?
Well, Amy, I want to thank you. I've served with 7 different mayors since I've been on the council. And I love the fact, like all the mayors before, that you answered your phone and you talked, and those morning conversations where maybe the Index Tribune has you and I talking about something, and because we've acted together, we're able to talk about it and deal with it. That is what makes a city or a town, like Ken Brown said, so great. So thank you for your year of service, and you're not leaving, so you're still here, so that's great, and we'll continue the great work, but thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Agrimonti?
Thank you. One thing I know, Amy and I have that ties us is we're city girls, and we come from the city, and you can always tell a city girl, but you can't tell her much. That's how I was raised, and Amy and I have secret looks, and we have secret sayings, and nobody in Sonoma knows what they mean, but they're fun to know. It's like a secret society, but it's really been wonderful. I've watched you throughout this year, and it's amazing, and I think Vice Mayor is correct. I thought my year as mayor was the year of litigation, and others say disaster year and all of those things, but I think this year went much better, so I really appreciate it, and I'm sure it has a lot to do with your leadership. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I really, I love being on the council with all of you, and where we're at, the discussions we have, and the thought that goes into it, and I really respect every member of this council tremendously, and it's a real privilege to be on here with you. Thank you, guys.
Vice Mayor Harvey, sorry. May I just make a few comments as well, representing staff? So, Amy, as you know, and as each of you know because you've been mayors and in the past, there's an amount of time that the city manager spends with the mayor. And staff spends with the mayor. So there's been a lot of time we spent together. I appreciate that time, and I've learned a lot from you and working with you. Amy is smart. She's creative. She cares deeply about this community. The whole Celebrate Sonoma idea brainstorm, I think, has been a fabulous one, and just an ability to look at things a little differently and think outside the box. And I think that has really helped us. So I appreciate your leadership. As a mom, I know how hard you work, and again, this is a volunteer job. So having a professional job and being mayor, it takes a lot of commitment. But I really appreciate your availability and dedication. On behalf of staff, we have this plan for you as well, and so really want to say thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I've really enjoyed working with you all, especially you this year. Okay. Okay. And now, I know, that's really cool. Okay, and now on to, are there, I guess we're having public comment on this item. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment? I guess on the recognition of the outgoing mayor.
Only nice comments are allowed.
The rest will be on Facebook.
You've done a really good job, Amy.
Thank you.
And it just makes me feel grateful to live in Sonoma with all. We should just call this like spouse and friend day or something. But it's been lovely.
Thank you, Ken.
Hey everybody, Mark Bodenhammer from the Sonoma Valley Chamber of Commerce. I just want to say thank you, Amy, for all the time you've taken this year. We've had a number of town hall meetings. We've gone out and walked around to different businesses together. We've come up with new events and asked you to take a lot of extra time to put together presentations for those. And we've even invented a whole new kind of emergency, and that took a bunch of your time as well. So thank you very much on behalf of the business community. Really appreciate your time and energy.
Thank you so much. All right. Oh.
There he is. Hi. I'm John Hahn, new member of Sonoma. And I just wanted to, Amy, thank you for your service. And if you folks are leaving, there's a little poster board we put together. See if you have favorite memories of Amy's mayoral escapades. Oh,
John,
thank you.
John Hahn is my boyfriend, for those watching at home.
Hi. Yeah, so if you want, you could, there's some pens over there, and it'd be great to have you guys fill that out. That's nice enough to know.
Thank you, John. And with that, I think we can close public comment. Okay, now on to the selection of the new mayor, and we'll start by asking for nominations, and there's no second that's required. If you want to, you can express support for a nomination or make a different nomination. When there are no more nominations, I will close the nomination period and then we'll take public comment. So all the nominations that are going to be made will be made first, then we'll take public comment, and then we'll have a roll call vote on the nominations. If there's more than one, we will take a roll call on whichever person was nominated first. And with that,
I nominate Logan Harvey, mayor.
are there any other nominations?
I support the nomination of Logan Harvey.
As do I.
As do I.
Great. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this nomination? Seeing none, I will close public comment and ask for a roll call.
Councilmember Hundley.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Councilmember Agrimonti.
Aye.
Councilmember Cook.
Aye.
Mayor Harrington.
Aye. Congratulations,
very
Logan
much.
Harvey. All right, wait. Oh, we'll put your stuff down and I'll
Okay.
give you the gavel.
You give me the gavel?
Yeah,
Sweet.
finally.
Finally.
Use it judiciously. Yeah. All right. Here you go.
Take your name tag, Amy.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, your name tag.
You have to be Amy now. Okay.
I have to be Amy now?
Yes.
That's fine.
Logan prefers to go by Amy Harrington.
Yeah, it's the new. We're keeping Amy Mayor. It's just different form. All right. And I have to do all the stuff.
Okay. child.
Get one for Bobby.
I'll move my plant. And then there's an annotated agenda.
Every time. It's gonna be a long year, Kathy. You gave me the gavel. It's gonna stay here. That's awesome.
Now
Okay.
you're on here.
Oh,
Thank you.
I got the same old.
That was
silver water bottle.
inelegant, but complete.
You did it.
We both have too much stuff.
It's not a crown, it's just a thermos, right? So- Just as good.
Well, I guess I should say some things. I really want to thank all of council for supporting my nomination to mayor. I love this town so deeply. This is where I was born. This is where I was raised. This is where I met my wife, where I fell in love. And I care about every single individual that's in this town. And I ran for council with the hope that we could move the ball forward and create opportunities for young people and people of all different stripes to be here and to improve the quality of life for citizens here. And I think, my first year on council under Amy's leadership really led the way there, and with the help of everybody else on council. And I look forward to another productive year. We've got a lot of great things ahead of us. We've got the UGB. We have a lot of development code updates that are going to create the future of housing in the city of Sonoma, which I'd like to work on. I think there's some great ideas out there about a specific plan for West Napa Street, and I'd like to explore those ideas. And we got to land this cannabis plane. So I'm excited for a next year, and very much looking forward to working with all of you. And with all of you, I really appreciate our work together, Kathy, and all of the rest of the staff. So cool. I'm excited. Hopefully not too many PSPSs. All right, now I have to keep talking. What do we do? Oh, okay, so now we're going to do selection for vice mayor. So I would like to ask for nominations for the position of vice mayor.
I'd like to nominate Rachel Hundley for vice mayor.
I support that nomination.
As do I.
As do I.
Roll call vote.
Public comment.
Oh, should we? Oh, I'm brand new, guys. Okay, so there's going to be. I haven't been in this seat for a year.
Just go with the script.
Okay, there we go. Would anybody, member of the public, like to comment on this item, on this nomination? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Oh.
So fast, man. I'm getting older and I don't move as fast.
It's a young council.
So congratulations, Rachel, and you as well, Logan. I didn't get a chance to react quick enough to speak, but I look forward to this year.
Bring it back. See any other people rising for public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Mrs. Barr?
Councilmember Hundley,
Yes, and thank you all.
Councilmember Harrington,
Hi.
Councilmember Agrimonti,
Aye.
Councilmember Cook,
Aye.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
So I'd like to invite everybody gathered for a small recess. We've got some cake. We've got some fake champagne. We're going to have a great time. Sparkling apple juice.
Non-alcoholic beverage.
So we'll be moving on, or is everybody ready to go? Lisa's here, yeah, we're good. All right, so we'll move on to the consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be passed by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of council, staff, or public request these specific items be removed for separate action. At this time, the council may decide to change the order of the agenda. Do you have anybody wanting to pull an item off the consent calendar?
I just want to make a statement on 5.5. I'm not, that's not, I really think the council has done wonderful work on this, but I still don't support it. I thought I'd let everyone.
Okay. Councilmember Cook?
And I also won't be supporting 5.5.
Councilmember Hundley?
And I don't want to pull it, but I did just want to acknowledge that 5.5, if it passes this evening, will be the conclusion of a many-year journey. 2 years just working on this, but really this has been working for perhaps 10 years, and it is. It's been a lot of hard work, and I've been really proud to be a part of that, and I appreciate my colleagues that have supported it and everyone in the community that's worked really hard to advocate for it, and I will be supporting that one tonight.
Great. So should we do a roll call vote for, public comment? Does any member of the public like to comment on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. So we want to, it sounds like there's too fast. Did Ken want to comment? I'm sorry.
This vote's been a long time coming, and I'm glad to be here this day. You have to give me a chance to get, that's why I have a cane, man, so.
I'm learning, Ken.
He's
Apologize. I'll be sure to make more time. So without seeing no more public comment, I'll bring it back to council. So it looked like we wanted to have a couple of members that didn't want to vote for 5.5. So how do we go through that?
So you can go ahead and approve the consent calendar, and we will register to no votes on 5.5, but you can keep them combined in that manner.
Okay. Do we have a motion for the consent calendar?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Hundley.
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington.
Aye.
Councilmember Agrimonti.
I guess I'm confused.
You are approving the consent calendar, but you are registering a
Minus
negative vote on
5.5.
5.5.
Okay, I approve I vote for the consent, but minus 5.5.
Councilmember Cook.
The same, I am voting for the rest except for 5.5. Build the dispensary in the county.
And Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously except for 5.2 or 5.5. I'm sorry, which was
5.5.
3-2.
Yep. All right, on to item 6.1. So this is item 6.1, discuss, consider, and provide direction on operation of management of the 2020 Sonoma Tuesday Night Market. Approved resolution outlining the market operator partnership, including contracts with Christopher Welsh of the Sonoma Valley Chamber of Commerce with budget approval. So I'll turn this over to Lisa Jansen, for the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Harvey, members of the council and community. So we are pleased to be back in front of council to talk about the 2020 Tuesday night market. And as council's aware, council directed us to move forward and do a continued multiple year agreement with Valley of the Moon Certified Farmers Market, a separate nonprofit. And based on a variety of reasons, they declined in August to continue basically managing the market go forward. So we put a RFP out, or a request for qualifications actually, in October and November, and did some marketing out to individuals. I think unfortunately part of what happened, we had one application, and part of what happened is just the world of PG&E power shutoffs affected not only government, but business and nonprofits, and there kind of wasn't enough time for everyone to pull everything together. So after stepping in, looking at where we were, staff reached out to create a new market operator partnership for the next year, and we're pleased to recommend this to council tonight. So Basically, what we're recommending to you is that the city would help take kind of a lead role in this, but we would be working closely with the Sonoma Valley Chamber of Commerce and a contract with that organization to do marketing, outreach, to help also do programming for the amphitheater. We believe there's ways to bring local business and brick and mortar businesses closer tied into the market, and also do some more programming in the amphitheater. For example, if it's Fresh Peach Week and farmers, we're going to try to connect those farmers and do some kind of taste testing, or a Sonoma Test Kitchen, where we're really bringing some of our restaurants down and highlighting those fresh peaches and trying to do that promotions. So there's different kinds of programming and ideas, some really creative things that have been brainstormed. And so the chamber will be helping do that, and then we'll also be managing kind of the alcohol sales as well. And the chamber, we believe, is a great partner. They have been a great partner in the city through our economic development, business development efforts. They have a good pulse in the community. They have great relationships not only with the business community, but with our nonprofit sector. Another vision is to bring nonprofits in a little more formally, so that there's kind of like the stock exchange. There's a ringing of the bell and we open the market, but each nonprofit would be invited to come open that market and talk about their nonprofit, and then be involved in the market in some way during that time. So there's all kinds of different ideas on how to build on what's already here. There would still be music in the amphitheater. We would still have food vendors and craft vendors, not in the amphitheater, music in the horseshoe. Thank you. Still be music in the horseshoe. We do think that the amphitheater is kind of underutilized, and council's had an interest on wanting to do more programming. And we really see that as a way of using that amphitheater to bring in some of those brick and mortars, to highlight nonprofits, and just to celebrate some of the things that we have as a community. The other key partner on this will be a contract with Chris Welch. Chris has been the market manager with the Valley of the Moon Certified Farmers Market for the last 9 years. Chris is just definitely kind of the operations czar and has a great expertise and knowledge in farmers markets. And so with his leadership and involvement, we get that institutional connection, and really he knows a lot of the vendors and can help us do that operational side. The other key part of the puzzle is Lisa Jansen, our city special events manager. Lisa, as council knows, is really excellent at overseeing our events, making sure that the city's policies are being followed on the event. Different events, also has a strong focus on recycling and some of the sustainability efforts that the council's wanted to do, and she'll be working with the market to bring in more of those items. And then also has done a lot of kind of co-sponsorship and marketing, and so we'll be working closely with the chamber. So what we really believe that by having this local team, we can continue to take this beloved event, keep its strengths, and continue to strengthen those links, but also then highlight those local ties, and continue the Tuesday night market starting in May, as the community loves and appreciates. So tonight what we have for you is asking you to approve a resolution that would basically direct us, the city staff, to kind of oversee this partnership, and would authorize me to execute a contract with Chris Welch and the Chamber of Commerce. It also would give the city manager authority to execute a variety of smaller contracts that are operational in nature. And then there is an overall draft budget that is in front of you. We're asking you to kind of approve that draft budget. There could still be some refinements as we move forward. But within that draft budget, as you can appreciate, there's a bit of a cash flow, and this event spans 2 of our fiscal years. So, and the revenues come in once the market starts, but we need to start paying some staff and some bills earlier. And since we're starting kind of with a clean slate, there's some need for some one-time startup money that will be fully reimbursed through the event. So there's a one-time budget adjustment as well. Mark Bodenhammer, Executive Director of the Chamber, is here, and Chris Welch is here. Lisa Jansen also asked questions, and so I would ask if it's okay with the council to ask Mr. Welch and Mr. Bodenhammer maybe just to make a few comments, and then we can go to council questions and open to public comment. So, Mr. Welch?
Hello, nice to see you guys. Congratulations, Mayor Harvey.
Oh, thank you.
I'm excited about what's going to happen here. And I think that the Valley of the Moon Certified Farmers Market, the nonprofit that's been managing it for the last 9 years, has done an incredible job of bringing the market to a pretty different place than when it started. And Lisa and Kathy and I have been working together, in my prior role working for the Valley of the Moon Certified Farmers Market. We work really well together. I'm excited about that partnership, as well as Mark and the Chamber being involved. And so I think this is a transition year. We've all agreed that we don't want to make any big changes, but and certainly the ones we want to make are positive. And so we're ready to get going. We're a little behind the 8 ball just because of the process involved. But I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity, and I'm excited about next year's market and what we're going to try to accomplish.
Thank you, Chris. Mark?
Thank you.
Evening, Mayor Harvey and members of the council. On behalf of our board, I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to explore this partnership. The Farmers Market's really one of my favorite events that happens here, and it's a super important community event. I actually know somebody who moved to the city of Sonoma just because she had narrowed it down to a few cities, and she went to the Farmers Market and thought it was so cool that the whole community comes down every Tuesday night and everybody hangs out. She's like, that's it, Sonoma's the one, I'm moving to Sonoma. And I think that we want to make sure that we keep that going. It's super important to us and to the community. With that said, it also does present some challenges for our local businesses, especially those around the plaza. And we really want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to minimize that impact, to bring them in, to get them involved, and to give them the opportunity to use that platform. You've got thousands of people a couple hundred feet away from your door. We should be able to get creative and find ways to make it work for everybody. So we want to get the businesses involved. We want to get our neighboring nonprofits involved, and really just, stomp on the gas pedal of making this as community focused as possible. So thank you very much. We'll stick around and have, if you have any questions, we'll be here. Thanks.
Great. So are there questions from the council for city staff or Mark or Chris?
I'd like to know if Mark is undergoing training as an auctioneer.
Mark, would you like to answer that? Anybody else? Any questions for anybody else? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it out to the public for public comment.
Yeah, I got up faster than that. Chris is an excellent choice as somebody who dedicatedly goes to the farmers market. Chris has held it together, and I'm glad that he's in charge, and I look forward to your reign, King Richard.
All hail King Richard.
Hi, Fred Allerbach, 19550 8th Street East. I did want to come down and witness the transfer of power, and that was fun tonight, and enjoyed the Amy's reign and now Logan's reign and other people's reigns before that. And now the farmers market reign. I've had the pleasure of working with Lisa since she first came, and Chris as well. Chris was somebody who really worked gracefully through some troubles with the farmers market and always brought a good attitude and goodwill. And I've been working with Mark in Sustainable Sonoma, and he's somebody also of goodwill who's proven to be able to work with a lot of different diverse stakeholders. So I think you just got a great team, so I don't see how it can possibly go wrong. So I think he's done a nice job fixing it up.
Impromptu little definition there. That was nice. Thank you. Any other members of the public would like to speak? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for, if it's all right with you, Jason. We'll bring it back to the council for comments.
Are you an Uber and they're calling you right now?
Sorry, Councilmember Harrington.
Oh, I just wanted to say, I was on the Community Services Environment Commission maybe 4 years ago, and I was working with Chris at that time on issues about the farmers market. And we asked, I think, to have more food stamps available. And at that time, we figured out how to make that work. And that Chris really knows so much of the detail about the size of the space of the lot and of like the stall people can have. And you know, where things work and how to make the whole thing run. So I am really very happy that you are on this team, because I know that the substance of the matters will definitely be handled. And Lisa, you've done such a beautiful job, so I think that's really great. And then Mark has put on so many incredible new events, and I just think that the three of you together are so talented and hardworking. It's going to be fantastic. So thank you for all that you do, and in advance, when whatever criticisms come your way, just deflect those and the best you can. But no, I think this is really wonderful, and we didn't know exactly how it would work out, but this seems super. So thank you. I support this.
Councilmember Cook?
Christopher, thank you for stepping up. This is going to be great. I've worked with you in the past. I know that you're great. And Mark, congratulations to the chamber for being part of this. And Lisa, I say the same thing that past Mayor Harrington just said. I think this is going to be great, and I look forward to May 1st.
I think it's the 5th.
It's the 5th, yeah.
Excuse me. Councilmember Hundley?
Vice Mayor.
Vice Mayor Hundley, I apologize.
Just because I called you council member last year doesn't mean you have to be the same as me. I am excited to support this tonight. I know a lot of people were concerned and worried about the change, just because Tuesday night is a sacred event in Sonoma that is loved by so many people. But I have full confidence in the team that has been assembled. I find it amazing that it has happened so quickly, and I am very excited to see what happens next year. I think that there are some opportunities to explore fun new things, and I think that there are also components that we know people love dearly, and I hope that we can hold on to those traditions. But Chris, I'm so happy that you are on the team, because you know everything about this. So thank you.
All right. Well, I'm very excited to see the team that's been assembled. When we had the previous management team of the farmers market decide they no longer wanted to be in charge, there were a lot of comments that this was going to be difficult. Is the market closing? And I was trying to ensure as many people that the city would have it together, and that we would take care of it, and that the market would open as planned the next year. And I think with this team in place, with having Mark on board, and having the experience that Chris brings to the table and the talent of Lisa, I think we're going to do a fantastic job. And I couldn't be happier with the team. I've already heard some fantastic ideas about incorporating what the farmers are bringing fresh to the table, with some use of the amphitheater to do recipes, or some sort of kind of fun thing that promotes the whole ideal. I think Mark's idea of trying to find ways for the business on the plaza to get involved in the market is a really great idea. And I think it's a great way to kind of remove the stress of that Tuesday night that some of them feel. So I'm looking forward to see what you all bring to the table. And of course, your experience is going to be extremely useful along the way. So thank you so much. And I appreciate all the work that staff put into this. And it's going to be a great thing. So we got to do a roll call vote. We make a motion. Or do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sonoma approving the operation and management of the 2020 Sonoma Tuesday Night Market, including but not limited to approving contracting with Sonoma Valley Chamber of Commerce and Christopher Welch for this purpose, and budget adjustment.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Hundley.
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington.
Aye.
Councilmember Agrimonti.
Aye.
Councilmember Cook.
Aye.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Love a unanimous vote. All right. On to item 7.1. Is this item being continued? No.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Okay. So we're moving on to 7.1 is being continued.
Oh, you have to announce.
So item 7.1, hearing to discuss and possibly act on the adoption of a resolution establishing residential and non-residential affordable housing impact fees will be moved to a public hearing on January 13th. So we'll continue that.
You actually need to formally open the public hearing.
Oh.
See if there's any public comment
Okay.
on basically continuing it to January 13th.
Is there any public comment on us
You have to
continuing?
open
Okay, I would like to open public comment. Wait, oh, what do I do? Okay, I'd like to open the hearing about moving the item to the 13th?
No.
No?
You have to.
We all know what we want to happen, so let's just do it that way.
It's a formal procedure
Okay,
because it's a
yes.
public hearing, and so you have to say the words, I'm gonna open the hearing on this topic, read it,
Okay.
and then say.
Okay, I would like to open the hearing on the topic of discussing, considering, and possibly acting on the adoption of resolution establishing residential and non-residential affordable housing impact fees for the new development consistent with policies in the city's certified housing element as contained within the city's general plan, and making a finding that this action is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, pursuant to CEQA guidelines 1506.
And then just do that, right?
Okay. The item will not be considered tonight, but the public hearing will be held and continued to January 13th. Are there any public comments about us moving this item to the 13th?
Close.
You're actually opening it up for public comment and
On the
bringing it
item?
back to the council.
Okay.
And
I'd
then
like
you
to-
decide whether to move it.
Okay, I would like to open the item for public comment.
Seeing no one
Seeing
arise.
none, I'll bring it back to council. We'd like to move it to January 13th. Can we do that, please?
Do we need a motion on that?
Do we need a motion?
Sure, why not?
Doing great.
I'd have one of these in there. Okay, great.
Make a motion to continue the public hearing to January 13th, 2020.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Hundley. Councilmember Harrington.
Aye.
Councilmember Agrimonti.
Aye.
Councilmember Cook.
Aye.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes, please.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
All right, so we're moving on to item 7.2, public hearing and consideration of a resolution adopting water connection charges and finding this action to be exempt from the environmental review under CEQA guidelines section 15273, and I'll turn it over to the planning director.
I'll actually take this one,
Okay.
please, Mayor. So if council recalls, back in 2017 and 2018, the city did a comprehensive review of our water rates. And as part of that study, council did approve the operating rates for what people pay for water at each on a monthly basis. The other piece was to look at the connection fees for new development or changes in use and connections to the city's water system. And so that had been kind of backburnered for our other priorities, but we wanted to finish it and bring it forward. And so I'd like to introduce Steve Gagno. Steve is with Raftellus. If council remembers, we worked closely with Sally Van Eaton during our water rate study. She has retired, and so Steve has picked this up. And so he will provide a overview about our capacity fee study and with recommendations for updated fees. And so with that, I will turn it to Steve.
Thank you. Good evening, newly elected mayor, former mayor, vice mayor, and all the other mayors. Kathy mentioned I'm Steve with Raftellus. We're a consulting firm, 100 strong. We help cities establish water and wastewater rates and capacity fees. We've been working with your staff on the capacity fee calculation. And this evening, I have 7 short slides on you, the results of this calculation. Next slide. So capacity fees go by a number of other names, and you may have heard some of these. They can be called development impact fees. And by the way, we're talking about water capacity fees only. They can go by impact fees, public facility charges, connection fees, system development charges, plant and facility connection, and so on. But next slide. What I want to be clear about is this is a fee to connect to your water system for the capacity in the system. It is not for the physical connection from the lateral in the road, so to speak, to the house. Okay, that's a different fee. What are capacity fees? Capacity fees are one-time charges assessed to new development or those requiring increased capacity to recover infrastructure costs, such as your water treatment plant, distribution mains and reservoirs, etc. As I mentioned, it's not for the actual connection to the water main. Capacity fees should be used for capital expenses only, such as debt service payments, or backbone facilities, such as a treatment plant, transmission and distribution infrastructure, and so on. Section 66013 of the California Code says to put capacity fee revenue in a separate fund, track it, and accrue interest in that fund. And capacity fee revenue is not to be used for O&M expenses. Next slide. So why charge capacity fees? Treatment plants and your whole water system is oversized for future customers, and your current customers have built and maintained your water system. So for someone to come in and build a new house and connect to it, it's not free because your past customers have built that system. They've maintained that system with their water rates. So capacity fees reimburse current customers for the above two items. And they achieve equity in distributing capital costs by charging new customers for the facility costs required to serve them. So we use the term, it gets growth to pay for growth. Next slide. We use the equity buy-in method to calculate the capacity fees. And the first thing we have to do is value your existing water system. So we valued it using something called reproduction cost less depreciation. And that's the box all the way on the left is the value of your existing system. So it takes the current asset value. You can add current reserve balances, which in your case we did not. But then you subtract outstanding debt. And the reason why we subtract outstanding debt is because outstanding debt is being collected through your current water bills. So we don't want to double collect it, once there and once here. So we subtract that, and we divide by the current in-service demand. This is also known as the total hydraulic capacity of all your meters. You divide by that, and you get a buy-in cost per meter. Next slide, please. And this is the calculation. So the top line is your asset valuation. Your water system is valued at, if you'll allow me to round, around $24 million. We subtract outstanding debt principal. You get the total remaining, and you divide by the number of hydraulically equivalent meters. And you end up with a buy-in capacity charge of $4,260. That's for your three smallest meters, 5/8, 3/4, and 1 inch. And then lastly, if you have a larger meter than that, the capacity fee goes up in proportion with the potential for that meter to flow. So in this table, you'll see, let's look at a 2-inch meter. You see there's a capacity ratio of 3.2. That simply means that a 2-inch meter can flow 3.2 times the amount of water through it than a 1-inch meter can. So the charge goes up in proportion with the hydraulic capacity of the meter. And I think that's the end of the presentation, and I can take questions and turn it back over to Kathy.
Questions? Councilmember Harrington?
Oh, can I ask? Could you go back 2 slides, please? Why? What is that debt that's referenced there? The $1.285 million. How is it held?
I know you have outstanding debt. I don't know what it's called. I'd have to open the model, but perhaps someone else.
It's like a bond, or what is it?
Yeah, I think there's one, I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember off the top. It's been a couple months since I've looked at this, but I think there was one bond payment, and I'm looking at Sue and/or.
I guess my question is, why is only principal considered in the charge and not the interest? I mean, that's part of the cost.
Yeah, we definitely don't subtract interest, and offhand, I don't remember the answer to that, but
because it would seem to me you're looking at the overall cost associated with it, and if you just take the principal, depending on the rate of the interest, you're missing a huge portion of the cost.
I think partly it's because the interest hasn't been paid yet. It's a future cost.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's collected through your current water rates, so we don't want to collect it there and collect it here, because then you'd be double charging for the same infrastructure.
But are you saying that the water rates only don't incorporate any principal?
No, your water rates incorporate your full debt, the full debt
Right.
service payment.
So why would it be double counted if you counted the principal here but not the interest?
I'm gonna have to take an action item to get back to you on
Okay.
that. I can get
Okay.
back to Kathy, but I know I've been doing this for 10 years and I've never subtracted both principal and interest. And there's a good reason for that. I'm just lapsing on it right now.
Okay.
So.
I'd like to know what it is, because it seems like it would both be included.
Yeah.
All right. I appreciate you not answering if you don't know at this moment.
I don't.
It's
And
good
I don't want to
practice.
make something up, but
Sure.
I will get back to Kathy.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none, we'll bring it out to public comment. Any members of the public like to comment on this item? If you could move
Steve,
away
do you
from
want to
that.
scooch? Well, we've got a member of the public coming,
All right.
thank you.
Hi, Fred Allerbach, 19550 8th Street East. I read a book about the history of California water and the development of aqueducts and pipelines to bring water into a place. And then the thesis of the book was that the real estate became the big thing to develop California and growth of real estate. So you bring in the piped in water, then you have a certain amount of growth, but you don't charge the actual cost for it. You depend on more growth to pay for what wasn't paid yet. So this guy in the book, he said that California real estate development was kind of like a Ponzi scheme of needing more growth to pay for what was undercharged first. And so Sonoma is interesting. It has the same pattern as Los Angeles and San Francisco, in that we have an aqueduct that comes from a whole different area that brings water into the municipal area here, just like Owens River and from the Colorado River to LA, and just like from Hetch Hetchy to San Francisco. So our system here is dependent on piped in water from another drainage. And so, you know, apropos of the urban growth boundary and issues of growth and infill and stuff, it's just curious to hear the presentation and say we're going to have growth, new growth, pay for previous growth. And then I thought about this book that I had read, but it doesn't seem like there's going to be that much growth in Sonoma to really pay for it. So the existing customers are going to have to be paying more, I guess it seems to me from listening to the presentation. But I just wanted to make a comment on the overall big picture of California growth and development and the reliance on piped in water and how it's paid for.
Anybody else for public comment? No? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Councilmember comments? Yep.
What is anyone going to be able to answer that question about the debt tonight? Because it does seem like I figured you were hastily looking it up. So I'm interested in knowing the answer to Councilmember Harrington's question as well. Outside of that, I will say that I understand that this particular charge hasn't been touched in a while, and it's part of the lot of work that we did a couple years ago on our water rates. So I think it's great that, you know, piece by piece, we're slowly getting to different things and being able to bring them to the present.
I think, is the principal left in there because you're subtracting the debt? Because then, like, if you're just subtracting the debt, the outstanding debt, the principal, then wouldn't the interest be left in the remainder? If it's considered, or no? Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
I think, thinking about it,
Yeah.
if you paid off your house right now, you would pay just the principal, right? You wouldn't pay just you wouldn't pay everything. So I think it's along the same lines that you're removing the principal, and like I said, it's future costs. All that interest is those payments you'd make over the next 20 or 30 years. So it's like paying off your house now. You pay off the principal and not the interest.
Okay, I think I understand what it is now. So basically, the forward interest is calculated into the rates, as is the principal.
Yes,
But you're taking the
full-
principal out because you already know that's a fixed number.
I think part of the way, at least the way I've thought about this, is your water system is, there's a current value of that water system. You take the current fixed assets, we subtract off the depreciation, and then you still have this debt that is then added, that's also then subtracted off, because the goal is like, what does it cost you to buy in? So I think that's, the house analogy kind of makes the most sense to me, but if there's a more formal legal reason, we'd be happy to provide an information, back to council at a later time.
Okay, great. So let's have that come back to council, because then we can have a more full answer. Pete?
Well, wait.
Oh, sorry.
Perhaps we
Hundley?
could take a break from this item, go
That's what
to
I
a
was-
different item, and then we'll return when we have an answer.
Yeah, if we could do that, I would. That was gonna be my next recommendation. If we could maybe put this one on hold, we'll try to get the information. I would like to see if we can move this forward tonight, especially since the consultants come up from LA. So want to try to, if we can, finish this. So maybe Mayor and Council, if we could put a 7.2 on hold, and we'll move to 7.3, and I'll let the mayor introduce it.
Is that all right with you?
That's
Okay,
fine.
cool.
Amazing.
So we'll move on to item 7.3, discuss, consider, and take possible action on the introduction and adoption of an urgency ordinance amending the Sonoma Municipal Code A, amending in part Chapter 19.1, zones and allowable uses, and B, amending Section 19.50.090, accessory dwelling units in its entirety by adding new regulations pertaining to accessory dwelling units and junior accessory units, and finding this action to be exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. Do I have to read every single word of this? No? Okay. I'm going to turn it over to the planning director.
Thank you, Mayor
David
Harvey,
Storr.
council members, David Storr. Before I begin, just a very brief presentation, I would like to introduce Christine O'Rourke. Christine, if you could stand up. Your council may recall that you authorized the expenditure of money to assist us in dealing with some laws that are coming on board on January the 1st of this next year. And Christine's been able to help us the last couple of weeks since you made that appropriation for us to present to you tonight. An urgency ordinance. This will be an urgency ordinance that takes effect tonight, so before the beginning of the year. Your council may recall that there's about a half a dozen of the many bills that were introduced this year and passed that relate to affordable housing, and specifically to accessory dwelling units and JDUs. So I've outlined in the staff report some of the highs and the lows, the comparisons between our current city law and also some of the mandates of the state. And in attachment A, you'll see that that's the contrast. A couple of things I can tell you. Number one, these laws are not easy to read and interpret. Number two, if we were not to act tonight, we would be subject to the new state law, and our ordinance will become null and void on January the 1st. And some of that is in the PowerPoint that's been presented to you in your packet tonight. Without going into all of the gory details, one of the things, for example, that we have in our current ordinance is a requirement for ownership of one of the two units, a main dwelling unit or an ADU. Gone. So that's a good thing when you think about it, but then there's also some, on the flip side, they're not good for Sonomans. So if nothing else, I think you'll hear Christine say, should she be asked, it takes away a lot of local control. And so we felt the need to be able to look at our ordinances and then blend it in with the minimum requirements of the law. So tonight, in a nutshell, that's the presentation. If you have any questions, we're willing to go into that, and Christine can certainly address those, specifically if you want to get into setbacks, height, square footages, things of that nature. But those have all been outlined in your staff report and contained in the ordinance. This concludes my presentation. And then Christine, I'd like to turn it over to her just to make a few comments.
Okay, all right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm Christina O'Rourke, and it's nice to meet you. If we could have the next slide. You can, you know what, you can just go ahead and put all the bullet points up. I didn't realize I wasn't gonna have a clicker, so we're going to make do. As David said, the state and Governor Newsom have declared that housing is of critical importance, and we have a severe shortage of affordable housing in the state, so they've passed a number of housing bills in order to increase local housing production. And two of those bills are affecting the ADU ordinance, the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, and those are AB 881 and AB 68, which were signed into law in October 2019. So of course there's not a lot of time to go the normal route and study this and draw up the ordinance and go to your planning commission, and then here, so we're proposing that you adopt an urgency ordinance, which will at least take you into the next several months. As David said, if you don't amend the ordinance now, then the city would have to default to implementing the existing statutory requirements of state law. A lot of those statutory requirements are actually in this new proposed ordinance because there's nothing really we can do about it. But if you do pass this ordinance, the urgency ordinance, it allows you to retain at least some control over some ADUs. The statutes are very difficult to interpret. I've read a number of different ordinances adopted by different cities. Everybody's got a little bit of a different take on this, so we will see what happens. We are waiting for the State Department of Housing and Community Development to issue guidance on how to interpret the state law. We also are expecting some follow-on legislation from the state, just in order to help kind of clarify. A lot of the sections are just really confusing, they're ambiguous, some of them are conflicting. So that's all to say that we will probably be making some changes to this ordinance, especially after we implement it and the staff starts to implement it and we see if there's some issues that come up where we could clarify it. The other thing is we need to send this ordinance to HCD after it's been adopted. HCD will review it. They'll have 30 days to review it. And they will then, if necessary, submit findings to the city. And the city will have to either amend the ordinance in order to bring it into compliance, taking in HCD's recommendations, or the city would, of course, doesn't have to do that, but then you'd have to make findings why you believe the ordinance is in compliance with state law. So this is just take one on the ordinance. So next slide, please. So I just wanted to kind of briefly go over some of the highlights of the ordinance, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. From a general ADU standards standpoint, now state law requires that ADUs are allowed in all areas that allow any kind of residential use. So the first part of the ordinance was allowing, in those use tables, allowing ADUs and junior ADUs, or JDUs, in the mixed-use commercial districts and the agriculture districts, wherever a single-family and or multifamily dwelling is allowed. The other thing it does is state law now allows accessory dwelling units on multifamily properties and mixed-use properties, whereas before they were just on residential properties. And they allow more than one unit. So now you can have, on a single-family lot, you can have an accessory dwelling unit in a detached unit and a junior accessory dwelling unit within the single-family home. So some single-family lots could have two of these. And also there are multiple ADUs that are allowed on multifamily properties. So a lot that has an existing multifamily dwelling would be allowed to have two detached ADUs, and also would allow to convert ADUs from the existing space that's not being used for livable space. Up to 25% of the existing units could be converted to ADUs in multifamily buildings. The other thing the state law is doing is it's removing the owner occupancy requirement for ADUs, and but is requiring the owner occupancy for junior ADUs. So that's the owner has to live in either the main dwelling or in the JDU. Next slide. So the development standards that have changed, first of all, state law is increasing the size of ADUs. So whereas your current ordinance limits ADUs to 850 square feet, state law is now saying 850 square feet for a studio or a one bedroom, and up to 1,000 square feet for a two bedroom, and two bedroom is the maximum size. Also, state law changes the amount of living area, so it's now up to 50% of the existing floor area of a single family home for an attached ADU, whereas before in your ordinance you have up to 30%. It also reduces side and rear setbacks to 4 feet. They're currently 5 feet for at least for accessory dwellings, so that's not a huge change. Also, no setbacks are required for existing structures. So if there's a structure that's non-conforming, you can't require that it be made to be conforming. The city can continue to impose the floor area ratio and lot coverage requirements of the zoning districts where these ADUs are located. However, now you cannot impose those districts and preclude the development of an 800 square foot attached or detached accessory dwelling unit. So that could go over the floor area ratio or
Are
lawn
there
coverage.
any limits on size for the up to 50% of existing building and attached unit? So like if you had a 6,000 square foot house, you could put a 3,000 square foot addition.
50% up to 850 square feet for a one single.
Oh, up to.
And
okay.
yeah, these are read in together, and up
Okay.
to 1,000 square feet for a 2-bedroom unit.
Okay. Okay.
Then the height limit is it's 1 foot higher. You currently have 15 feet for a detached unit, so there's 16 feet now for detached and single-story ADUs. And then second-story and 2-story ADUs we have in the ordinance that they may not exceed the height of the primary dwelling. Next slide. As far as parking and design goes, a big change to the parking is that now if you have, if you're converting a garage or carport to an ADU, that parking that is being taken away does not have to be replaced for the single-family dwelling. And also, the ADU does not require parking. Design standards have to be objective, so we have revised those standards. So the few ADUs that are going to go for ministerial planning review, we have more objective standards that the planner will be able to implement. And then there were some changes to the junior ADU legislation. Primarily, in your case, it can no longer require the interior access. So it just has to have exterior access. Next slide. The other thing that the legislation is doing is that now essentially there are 2 paths to approval. And one is the ADUs skip planning approval entirely. They go straight for a building permit. So there's a set of circumstances where the unit has to be approved. As long as it meets certain standards, it has to be approved through a building permit only. Those are for junior accessory dwelling units within existing or proposed single-family dwelling. ADUs that are either within existing or proposed space of a single-family dwelling, or they're in existing space of an accessory structure, and that accessory structure can be expanded by 150 square feet in order to allow ingress or egress. And then detached ADUs, also these would go straight for a building permit approval. New construction detached ADUs that have their maximum 800 square feet, 1 story or 16 feet high, and 4-foot rear and side setbacks. So that's a big change. And then the next slide, also the multifamily units that I was telling you about earlier, about now that those are allowed, those are also all to go directly to building permit approval, no planning approval. So those are the converted ADUs on multifamily dwellings and the detached ADUs. The detached ADUs, the 2 of them are a maximum of 800 square feet, and they also have the 4-foot rear and side setbacks. So last slide, please. So what is left for ministerial approval? Well, that is primarily new construction attached ADUs. Also, if there's detached ADUs that are over 800 square feet, up to that 1,000 square feet, which is the maximum, those would go to planning review. When they go to planning review, then there's some additional standards that can be imposed. The design review, of course, parking requirements. That's pretty much. There are other standards like floor area coverage, as long as it doesn't preclude the development of an 800 square foot ADU. So that's it. That's a lot.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, Council, there's one component. So tonight we mentioned that this will be an urgency ordinance. At the first of the year, the first Planning Commission meeting, we do intend to take the regular ordinance and go through a regular process, which will then replace the urgency that we have in place.
Great. Do we have questions from council?
So I'm sorry, is this basically sorry. Is this basically a delay to allow us to be able to understand what the ramifications of this?
Well, essentially, if you don't adopt the urgency ordinance, then you're just going to default to state law. And state law is going to allow, there's more things that state law would allow. So it's just kind of tiding you over now so that you have something in place for January 1st when the state law goes into effect.
Well,
and then it buys some time to go back go through, bring it to planning commission, excuse me. But also, I think to get some more additional guidance and to send the ordinance to HCD and have them find whether, it in compliance with state law. So that would be also helpful.
Great, thanks. It's interesting, I think over a year ago, I, along with others, were discussing this, and I used the word that I love to use, harbinger of things to come, and this is it. And it makes it very difficult for cities to be able to work through this system. So I think this delay is a very good idea for us.
If I can just add too, as Christine mentioned, that HCD will be sending out guidance to all of the cities and counties in California. I think they promised before the end of the year, but I don't know that that's necessarily going to happen.
I think it's going to be early next year.
Is it early next year now?
That's what I'm hearing anyway.
Okay.
Early 2020. We're still in 19, aren't we?
Any other questions from council? All right, I'll bring the item out to public comment. Any members of the public would like to comment on this item? Please rise, state your name and your address.
Bill Willers, 873 First Street West. I would urge the council to adopt the urgency ordinance. It'll give you time, one, to adjust to the new requirements, and also to understand that all single-family zoning now has become multifamily zoning. There's not much more to say about it. I think that the city should still retain its ability to modify and codify its own ordinances and not let the state just mandate things. So the urgency ordinance gives you that opportunity to do as much as you can within the confines of the state law to make this satisfy our community.
Thank you, Mr. Willers. Anybody else for public comment?
Vic Conforti, 755 Broadway. I question the state law that without any ministerial approval would be, in terms of attached, I guess the J-dues, there is no longer any ministerial approval, essentially. Is that the case then? And then the second question with the detached ADUs that are under 800 square feet, if I guess I'm understanding this correctly, there would be no ministerial approval. So essentially, it's going to make quite a difference to the regulations, but the biggest obstacle is really the cost of constructing these, the fires and all of the implications with the construction cost. It'll help with these removal of the impact fees, but the most difficult thing is most owners who are offered something like this, or where there's a discussion about this, when they see the cost, they just stop. And now converting garages, converting existing space to junior ADUs is feasible. I've done one of those for a client, and that is very feasible. So you'll probably see a lot more of those. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Fred Allebach, 19550 8th Street East. From the standpoint of the Sonoma Valley Housing Group and affordable housing advocacy, I'm a little bit torn because I see that the idea of local control sort of allows the kind of obstructionism that's led to the state making these kind of laws. So when Jerry Brown took away the redevelopment money and people were complaining about it here in the North Bay, Jerry Brown said, well, you guys don't want housing over there anyway. But then you get to ADUs, and these things there's no price range, there's no rent, you don't know who they're for. It's not who knows what they're for, or whether the guy's just going to use it for an office. So that was the thing about the Meadowlark Lane or whatever it is over there by the hospital. that they all have ADUs, but who knows what purpose they'll be serving or if they'll even come as housing, but you want to try and count them as housing. So that's one thing that I don't really like about ADUs is that there's no category for them for a price range. And then, so I don't see really the point of trying to limit them really, because, you know, I don't really see that many around or hear that much talk about them. But it seems like this is kind of a, you know, this thing is all over the place, and I'm sure the idea of not wanting local control will go over like a lead balloon with everybody here, but, you know, in a place where you know, local control has stopped a lot of stuff from the Sonoma Valley Housing Group standpoint. But I'm not saying that I like CASA, because CASA came and it ended up being all the top cats got all their stuff in and all the little guys didn't. So, you know, this is kind of a mess, the local housing and state housing situation. But I just thought I'd get up and blow some hot air on that for a while.
Thank you, Mr. Alabak. Anybody else rising for public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Councilmember comments? Vice Mayor Hundley.
Thank you. I would like to thank our staff and our consultant or our contract planner for getting this together so quickly. I think that there's going to be a lot of this over the next few years of these housing laws coming out and having very short runways for cities to adapt, which I do think that the state should put more money on the table to help cities that actually want to do these things comply. But I am proud that Sonoma is going to be one of those, and that we get to have our own laws and proceed in the way that we want to. But some people do have cynicism about ADUs. Mr. Alabak does, but you know, I've been an attached ADU for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, and it's been the most stable place that I've lived since I graduated high school. And the reason is because your landlord most often lives on the same property as you, and they don't want just anybody there, so it's a very stable relationship, and it doesn't fluctuate as much as the market does. And so even if it's an empty ADU, it's still better than no ADUs. So I'm excited about this. I do think that the ADUs are a great way to make our mini single-family areas be a little denser, without having to, you know, build something brand new. But I hope that this helps more people have ADUs. So I'll be supporting it today, and I'm just mostly just impressed with staff for working so quickly, especially in light of everything else that's been going on lately, like our winning emergency response.
Councilmember Harrington.
Oh, I'm also going to support this tonight, and I just wanted to say that just as one segment of the Sonoma population that people talk about a lot, which is a question of how could their children move home. People have a home here, and they want to know how can their kids move home but not live with them. It's the unspoken portion of that sentence. And this is one way that people can do it, and I think it's valuable, and making it easier is important, and trying to keep it a hometown where people can have options, whether or not they're rented publicly or a family member winds up living there or a parent. I think it's great. Thank you so much for all the hard work.
Councilmember Cook.
I'll also be supporting this. It seems like urgency ordinances seem to be the new norm, which is sad because if you look at the costs, this is costing like the city of Sonoma. And they're smaller cities than us. And this is where I think the disconnect is there, and we just need to do something about this. I am for local control, but when you have to go through all these steps and you look at the cost, I was going to ask that during the question, but I think I know the answer, too much. But I will be supporting this, and I do support ADUs.
It's interesting. There's so many moving parts in this. Some of the issues why there isn't affordable housing is because neighborhoods don't want them, and the state is sick of them. They're sick of us, and we're really trying hard to do those things. The appeals come in. We spend thousands of dollars to respond to appeals. And so, you know, that's just what our life is like. I think everyone on this dais really wants to have affordable housing. I would love to put something on our property that may cause a problem for me and my husband, but that's okay. And but I think it's really a good idea, and I appreciate, Rachel, that you are a person who is in a situation like that. You seem to be very comfortable, and but there are more things than we just don't want affordable housing. I think people should know that there's more going on than that. The state got sick of hearing all of it. Neighborhoods coming in, stopping cities from doing things. So, and some cities, of course, just didn't want to do it. But it's not just the city's fault. And still angry about removing our redevelopment agency funding. They've wanted that for 20 or more years.
Thank you, Councilmember Agrimonti. So, yeah, I'll also be supporting this. Again, always blown up away by the work of staff. I think we really have a great team here, and I really appreciate you jumping into it, jumping out of a power shutoff into a bit of a power grab. So that was great and well done. I think that ADUs are a good piece, especially for Sonoma. We have so many residential zones and so many deep lots here, and I personally know quite a few families that, you know, the parents are starting to retire, they have large lots, and to be able to move back into an ADU and have their kids come and live in the front of their house allows the grandparents to be involved with the raising of their grandchildren, and I think it is a really good option. There are obviously going to be, with any policy, there are always abuses and things like that, but I think that in general, creating an opportunity in these single-family home zones for more affordable housing is kind of exactly what's going to fit into the housing fabric a little bit better in Sonoma. We don't have a lot of empty lots left to do big multifamily, so I think this is great, and thank you so much for your work, and I'll be voting for this tonight. So do we have a motion on this item?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Hundley.
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington.
Aye.
Councilmember Agrimonti.
Aye.
Councilmember Cook.
Aye.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
All right, so we're on to item 7.4. Sweet. 7.4, we're holding a public hearing to discuss, consider, and take possible action to adopt an urgency ordinance imposing interim restrictions on housing developments. And I'm going to turn this over to the planning director.
Actually, we're going to turn this to our city attorney, Jeff Walter.
Okay, Jeff Walter, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
At the last council meeting, the council directed staff to come back with an urgency moratorium. This one is different than the one you just adopted. This one actually prohibits approvals and development. The other one allows it, but it allows it for specific projects subject to certain conditions. This prohibits the approval of housing projects, except for those that are expressly exempted. It does not cover commercial projects. It does not cover ADUs or JDUs that you were just allowed to occur, subject to your conditions that you're now opposing on the urgency ordinance. This will last for 45 days. We are proposing that the council come back on Friday to extend the moratorium. We're doing that because the new SB 330, the Housing Crisis Act of 2019, prohibits the imposition of housing moratoria starting at January 1, 2020. And also states that if certain findings can be made, I say it prohibits, it restricts the ability to impose housing moratoria starting January 1, 2020, and also requires HCD to approve any moratorium imposed on January 1, 2020 or thereafter. So we're taking action before this new law takes effect, adopting it. We're proposing it be introduced and adopted tonight, and then on Friday it would be extended for 10 months and 15 days. During which time we will have an opportunity to attempt to modify our own zoning code to comply with the new laws that were signed into effect in October by the governor.
I think it should be mentioned too, is my understanding is this moratorium would exempt affordable housing projects from it. So any affordable housing project that would come before us during this period would go through the normal process. Is that correct?
I think it does the opposite, but if you wish it to exempt affordable housing projects, we can.
That was council direction at the last meeting.
Oh, I don't remember that. It does,
Oh, I do.
it does exempt multifamily housing consisting of at least 1/3 of the total square footage. But I can change the language to not exempt, to exempt affordable housing projects. If you wish to do that.
My understanding was that was a big piece, and I remember David speaking about how that was going to help with HCD because they don't. One of the big purposes of blocking housing moratorium is to make sure that affordable housing gets built. So adding that to our moratorium, I think, is really important.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah.
Let me work on some verbiage while you take public comment.
Well, we got council member questions first. Anybody else have a question?
Sorry about that.
No.
No. All right. We'll bring it out to the public for comment.
Fred Hollabach, 19550 8th Street East. I'd like to ask a question for staff is what qualifies as an affordable housing project? I'd like to know what the area median income, what deed restricted for how many years, or what is it? Is it only above moderate, or I'd like to know the details on that, because I would think that if you want to say an affordable housing project, that you'd want to have a spectrum of the area median income in with that project and not highline it to just the top areas of the AMI.
Is the microphone on for? Yeah.
So,
Thank you, Fred.
I'll give that a shot. The ordinance that we have at the moment.
Oh, don't we
define-
normally answer the questions
Yeah,
at the
we
end?
answer questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No, I got it. I need the help. Thanks. Next public commenter, please, Bill.
So I'm going to actually, Bill Willers, 873 First Street West. I'm going to actually ask for a question to be answered because it pertains to my comments, because I need clarification on
Do we allow that?
resolution. Anyway, my
yeah.
question relates to Section 4, Item E. What Jeffrey actually read was multifamily dwelling projects in which multifamily housing consists of at least 1/3 of the total square footage project, provided the exemption, blah, blah, blah. One, it's like mud to me, unless it's a project-specific exemption. And if it is, I'd like to know what that project-specific is, because it'll have consequence to my comments. So, is it a specific project through the mayor?
I'm seeing our planning director shake his head no, that it's not a specific
Then I
project.
think this language should be struck, because it's as muddy as mud can get. The other thing that I would ask in Section 4 is that new single-family residences on existing lots be exempted. I know that it exempts remodels and additions, but you can remove a building from an existing lot and build a house without any impact in terms of what the moratorium is trying to achieve. I support the moratorium, again, for the same reasons. SB 330 is a very difficult piece of legislation dictated by a representative of the Berkeley area, and Berkeley is going to fight with two very large housing projects that are about to be proposed as of January 1st based on that legislation. So that's pretty interesting that the representative of Berkeley is mandating her desires on the rest of the state. I think Sonoma needs to very clearly identify those sections of its development code that are subjective, find what it really wants to produce as housing, and codify it and make it objective. If we want to produce quote unquote affordable capital A and small a housing, then we need to codify that and not just say housing in the mixed use zone. We need to tell what that housing is, how big it is, and how much of it we want. So I hope that this moratorium allows us to do that.
Any other members of the public who would like to rise to speak?
Thank you for this opportunity. As a member of this community and my family since 1968, by extended family living in this community, many generations and many families who've been here from the beginning of this western expanse.
Mr. Mayor, we need
The
to know
history,
his name.
I wanted to thank you for the work that you've been
Oh,
doing.
sorry, sir, could you please state your name?
Yes, Maurice, first name.
Thank you.
Horn, last name. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice.
And I want to thank you all for the work that you're doing. I know that being involved in the construction industry and friends who are in architecture and all that we've been through at Sonoma Strong, thank you for all of your support and understanding. I wanted to bring up this important need, and I think everyone here is aware of this important need from family members. We're talking about children, for those of us like myself who have numerous children who graduate, and some of them who go into different fields, some that are not as lucrative, and of course with many things that you're aware of, including student loans. That is an important factor for our community. It's right up close. We also have, I know we've talked about this, it comes up regularly, a wonderful workforce, many of them who commute from far away. Just recently meeting a young lady who works at Safeway who commutes all the way from Lake County, is so appreciative of the opportunity of working here in Sonoma, as many are, and you know that that commute down the hill is not an easy one. Having met and talked recently to a number of people who work very hard in our community, there's a real need for having that opportunity to be closer to work. And as we know, many people who find their work here in Sonoma find family, they find commitment, they find longevity. And those are things the community can really use. We also have people who've been in this community for many years, dealing with different hardships of aging, and you know so much more about the particulars. I just wanted to share, again, Sonoma's history in leading the way. Berkeley has its history. We have ours. We are a birthplace, we are a place of mix, and there's many things that we can read about and acclaim about our culture and our history here. Leading the way is very important, and we have creative ways that are lucrative, that create money and abundance for our community. Looking at the people who work here, looking at the people who've lived here, looking at families who are returning and growing. I don't know the particulars on the exodus. I know a number of families I have loved and grown up with have chosen to move out of the area. The fires have also made that choice as well. Some of these areas are available. Some of these available areas that you're looking at in other communities. I don't know if there's moratorium, the specifics of it, but I know that we can also work from the town of Sonoma at this center. We can also look at our extended family, whether that's Shelville and extended areas where there is available property. And by working with them, we can come up with really wonderful solutions. I thank you for all the work you're doing and for the time for me to express my love for this community and the work to create affordable housing for the people who come here and work here and families who've gone through
Thank you,
hardship who
Maurice.
can remain. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Happy holidays.
Too.
Good evening and congratulations, Mayor Harvey. My name's Carol Marcus, 873 First Street West. And I just want to express great hope and optimism that we can, in the coming year, tighten up our development code, because I truly believe that that is the best way to provide affordable housing in this community. If we tell potential developers what exactly it is that we're looking for and what we're not looking for. And simply by tightening up the language in our development code, I honestly feel that we can accomplish great things within the city of Sonoma. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. We got one more public commenter.
Vic Conforti. I guess my first comment is that there aren't too many people here in the construction business, or the couple architects, I guess, and maybe a planning commissioner. That I would hope to see more people here, and that I think you would want to have more public input for a moratorium. And I don't know whether, is this a urgency issue because of state law? Is that what's happening here? Then I guess it's just unfortunate that the website, city website, and IT and others wasn't advertised or made very prominent in the news. Some of the ordinance, as Bill mentioned, is difficult to understand. Everything is, the ordinance has some exceptions to the moratorium, one of them being the multifamily dwelling projects, which consist of at least 1/3 of the total square footage of a project, and then has a however, referring to government code such and such. How would this affect the hotel, West Napa Street hotel, where there's a 50% residential requirement? I guess kind of question. And if this were a normal multifamily housing project, like 12 units or something like that, of course 1/3 would be housing, if it was the entire thing was housing. So I'm wondering, was that the intent, to allow a project that is fully multifamily to be exempt from the moratorium, if we use those terms?
We'll answer the question after public comment, yeah.
Yeah, that would, okay.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. I guess let's just be careful with I guess you're under the restriction time-wise, so, but moratoriums are serious business in terms of a year's wait on someone has an offer in on a property or an option to purchase a property, a housing developer, and all of a sudden they've got a 12-month delay. I hope everyone is aware of it who is proposing any projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else coming for public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it to staff to answer the questions that were asked during the public comment. I think we had 3.
Turn some of the more specific questions to our planning director and the city attorney. But I think at a very high level, I want to make sure folks are clear on this. The city, we brought this forward, and there was a question request from council, and council discussed this at the last meeting. And the reason this is being brought forward as an urgency ordinance is because the state of California, SB 330, really was a game changer, and frankly puts a variety of requirements with very little runway for the city to do some of the work. And it basically, the cities can no longer have subjective standards, everything has to be objective. The way our development code is written is there is a lot of subjective standards, and it is going to take time to clarify that and rewrite portions of our code and bring them back through planning commission and council. So the intention of this moratorium, people can still submit applications, but they cannot be approved. If people have submitted applications before this urgency ordinance takes effect, those we will still process as normal. So there is still work that will be done. And I'll let the 2 professionals on my right talk about that more, but I think it's important to say the door is not closed. People can submit, we will process, but then we're going to be updating our rules as we process, and then hopefully have clear objective standards, and we will not approve items until we have those clear and objective standards. We ask council to, again, the maximum amount of time you can do is the first 45, and then for a total of an additional 10 months and 10.5 months as this first round. We hope to bring back changes within 6 months, and we'll be working hard to do that. And so we can try to bring some of those objective standards. But I wanted to try to clarify that a little bit in terms of the why and what the overall goal is. Again, as council knows, once you set a date, you can't change the date in an urgency ordinance, which is why we want to take kind of the maximum amount of time, but that is not our intention. Our intention is to try to move it forward. So in terms of some of the more specific questions, I'll turn it back to planning director and city attorney.
Give Jeff some more time to think of some of his answers, but some of the things that Kathy just mentioned about our development code, we have a development code that has a lot of design guidelines in it, and that's where the subjectivity comes in. They're not objective, and that will be something for us to look at as we go through a development code discussion as a community. one of the things, for example, that SB 330 does is it basically restricts local agencies to 5 hearings on a project. So if you have a study session, there's one of the 5. If you have an appeal, there's 2 of the 5. And so you're somewhat limited from going to the design review, historic preservation board, planning commission, then to council. So we have to be judicious and try to understand the intent of the law. Again, this is another one of those that was kind of including a lot of different components with respect to what agencies do. The most complex thing that it does is it adds a new application process on a local agency that basically vests a project with the standards and fees at the time that a pre-application is submitted, not even counting a regular application. And developers have 180 days, to which they must then submit an application that then looks backwards to the standards that were in place at the time that they submit their preliminary application. So, as Kathy said, there's a lot of things that we've got to get done between now and the end of the year to capture our right to ask for certain things in that pre-application, in addition to the minimum things that the state law requires us to ask us that we're supposed to have in there consistent with the law. So we do need to take a look at a lot of things in our development code. Secondly, there was a question about affordability. Our inclusionary housing ordinance includes 2 definitions, one for LI, which is 50 to 80% of the AMI, and moderate, which is 80 to 120%. I don't know if the speaker was referring to capturing very low income, which is a different bandwidth, so to speak, but those are the things I believe that Mr. Walter will talk about in a minute when it comes to encompassing those things. Jeff?
Actually, I want to ask some questions first before you start, because they're going to be about this section 4. I don't know what the solution is, but I don't really understand where most of these came from, and I don't think that they seem well defined. So in addition to the affordable housing part, I just wanted to put on the list of things that I find problematic to be the E, which I'm not sure where that came from, and then also the putting transitional housing and supportive housing as a housing development project. I mean, I'm just not really sure where these things came from because I thought we had a good discussion about it last time.
I have similar questions about what is included in here. Same thing, why affordable housing is not explicitly excluded, and then that all multifamily projects would be included. I think those are the majority of the projects we're concerned about, large multifamily projects.
Yeah, I would like to know where section E came from because it is kind of a surprise. And then as far as affordability, I mean, my assumption is that that's all kind of big A, big H affordable housing that we're talking about there. When I'm saying that, that's what I'm assuming. So, and I'm kind of assuming this is a 100% affordable project that we're talking about when we're talking about an affordable housing. I don't know how the rest of council feels. And that would cover, you know, the whole gamut from low and all the way to moderate and high. And usually those projects can only get funding on kind of the lower end. So that would be my assumption there. But Jeff, did you want to make some comments?
I do. The city has the power to impose moratoriums in the land use context exclusively under a government code section called 65858. Hold on. 65858. And it's that source of authority that this ordinance is based on. And it contains definitions which are reflected in this ordinance. So for example, in section 4, the subsection E exemption, multifamily dwelling projects in which multifamily housing consists of at least 1/3 of the total square footage of the project. That came from that code section I just mentioned, and it came from that section in the following context. 65858 states that the city can impose a moratorium on housing projects. Actually, it can impose under this ordinance moratoria on a variety of different kinds of development projects. The council has selected housing because the SB 330 it only pertains to housing. That's the Housing Crisis Act of 2019. However, in order to extend the 45-day moratorium under this section 65858, this council has to make specific findings as to multifamily housing. To extend a moratorium on multifamily housing, you must make findings of the following. you must find that the continued approval of multifamily housing projects would have a specific adverse impact upon the public health or safety, which means a significant, quantifiable, direct, and unavoidable impact based on objective, identified, written public health or safety standards, policies, or conditions as they existed on the date the ordinance is adopted. So I was looking at that section thinking, we don't have those quantifiable, objective standards that would allow the council to extend a moratorium on multifamily housing. So I looked at the definition of multifamily housing. It means projects in which multifamily housing consists of at least 1/3 of the total square footage of the project. That's also in that government code section. That's where you get the 1/3. Now, it does not prevent the city council from exempting all multifamily projects, whether they're for affordable housing or not. If that's the council's desire to exempt all multifamily housing projects, whether they are affordable or not, we can do that.
So if we had a project like the Mockingbird Lane project, would that be exempt?
1/3, they were 20%, so probably not. But if you want to exempt all multifamily housing, and that would.
No, I just want to understand what it means in practical reality. So if somebody has a project, I can't remember where it is, but they've been collecting the entitlements. What do they have, like 50 units or something? Would that be exempt?
Mockingbird clearly would not under that definition. But I don't know about this other project you're referring to.
Mockingbird would not be exempt, so they would be covered under the moratorium under this scheme. They would be covered.
No, they would not, because there's another exemption. That is any project, housing project for which the application has been deemed complete.
I'm not talking about that specific project. I just mean a project of that similar size. For example, let's say a new Mockingbird comes forward January 1.
Mm-hmm.
Can that go forward, or is that subject to the moratorium?
Under this language, it would not be able to go forward.
Okay. So can you just give me an example, just so I understand what type of project would go forward, like specifically, like what would it be? When you say multifamily, what do you mean, like a triplex? Like what types of projects, like specifically, would that allow? I'm just trying to figure it out, practically speaking, what that means. Sorry.
Well, a triplex is entirely multifamily, so that would be entitled to move forward unaffected by this moratorium.
It would not be subject to the moratorium?
No.
What about like a duplex?
I don't think so either, would it? It's considered multifamily 100%.
So when you say a multifamily dwelling project in which multifamily housing consists of 1/3 of the total square footage.
Of at least 1/3, yes.
So if there's multiple buildings being built and 1/3 of them are multifamily, then it is not
exempt.
subject.
Correct.
So for example, just so I can understand what we're talking about conceptually, the Broadway Truck and Auto, that would not be subject to the moratorium because they have townhouses or whatever they have. So a project like that would not be subject to the moratorium, but a project like Mockingbird would?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I just was trying to visualize it.
Yes. Now, again, as I said before, if you want to make all multifamily projects exempt, we can do that with fairly significant ease. Likewise, if you want to still retain the notion that if it's a mixed-use project and less than 1/3 is multifamily, then it would not be exempt. But you do want to exempt affordable housing, we can do that too.
So, I mean, it seemed to me that the whole purpose of this exercise was to try to basically
Find out these answers.
put a pause and work through the development code sections that need to be changed while nothing's coming through kind of with the old rules. And that was kind of the goal.
So the more exemptions you have, the less effective the pause will be.
Yeah, exactly.
But we need to be realistic about what this pause really will produce.
Right.
SB 330 is largely a procedural statute. It imposes new procedures. For example, you cannot have more than 5 public hearings, including study sessions, on a given project. That's from planning commission to design review to study sessions to meetings to conduct an ordinance, that sort of thing. They all count. And that won't change. This exemption, this moratorium will not change those procedural requirements. The other more significant effect of SB 330 is that it freezes the laws in effect that apply to a development application at a much earlier stage than is typical, except for subdivisions. It's typical that, except for subdivisions, the laws that apply to a project are those laws in effect when the ultimate decision is made, not when the application is submitted or when it's deemed complete. That's been changed by SB 330. So I'm not sure that this, so for example, let's assume on February 1, 2020, somebody submits an application, we'll call it complete. And at that point, our development code has several subjective criteria or standards that would otherwise apply to that application. The application of those subjective standards may be in doubt because the law says that the laws in effect on February 1, 2020 apply to that application. So we get to the point of approving this project, we can perhaps deny the approval of the project if the project gets to a state of approval during the life of this moratorium. But we may not have been able to avoid the fact that the subjective standards that were in effect on February 1, 2020 have been rendered null and void by SB 330.
Even though the moratorium was in place when the project was applied for.
So the ultimate effect this may have is unclear. It's not quantifiable at this time.
It seems like there's a lot of questions that we don't have the answers to. I'm not sure that this is a good idea myself.
Yeah, I'm not clear on that either, in all honesty. I mean, maybe David Storer can speak to the kind of benefits that he sees with it. I mean, because we're already exempting, I mean, it seems to me, using Amy's Mockingbird example, and with this, you could build Mockingbird except for 1/3 of it, you put a multifamily dwelling unit, and now you're approved. You're through the moratorium effectively, right? And then affordable housing as well. So it's not really going to provide a stopgap except for single family residences basically on existing lots, which there may be benefit there. People may be okay with that. But David, please speak to some of the benefits of this. What would you advise the council?
What I can tell you is that in my years as a professional planner, this is the most complex thing to have come from the legislature. Lawyers are confused by it and think it's very problematic. The concern I have on behalf of the city is that I know I've got a development code that's got a lot of subjective criteria in there, and it won't be able to be used on January the 1st to review a project. And so I think our attempt here was try to put something in place that would give us a pause, so to speak, so that we can try to figure out what we need to pull out of there and be able to use that and quantify it to the best way that we can.
And Jeff, your opinion is that Section E must be required so that we can extend the ordinance after the 45 days?
Section E.
For Section 4E.
No. Section E, no.
4E.
4E.
We have to exempt that in order to be able to extend. But if we,
yes.
for the 45 days.
Yes. So for example, if you were to exempt all multifamily housing,
right,
then there'd be no problem. Because this one says at least 1/3. If it's at least 1/3, it's exempt from this moratorium. So if you make all multifamily housing projects exempt from the ordinance, that would be also viable and supportable.
It's a weird law. It's just kind of a weird, very specific, kind of strange thing to throw in there for. I mean, you might as well just say you can't do housing moratoria. I mean, David, do you think this is a benefit?
Yeah, I do. I mean, anything to combat the state, I'm trying to figure out what they can do, what they're doing to us.
Could I just?
Go ahead,
And
Mel.
it's interesting, what I see is somewhere down the future, if we're forced to do some of these things that decrease some of our requirements, I don't want them to look back at us, the council, and say, wow, what the heck were they thinking? Why didn't they look at, the moratorium? Why? And I know we are, but it's so scary to think that we're going to be railroaded into something because of issues that have happened now in the last 5 years about affordable housing. And I personally, and I think I hear the council saying the same thing, that the moratorium would be a good thing. It may not accomplish 90 or 50 or 80%, but it certainly gives us time to understand how we deal with this issue in the future. I don't know.
Councilmember Hundley.
Yeah, it's this is complicated. I think So I see either we could do 45 days and have it be more of what we were probably thinking in our heads, or we have to do this version, we can have it longer. I do think that, well, it's going to be a lot of fast work next year by you guys regardless. So this overall, it's not something that I'm interested to have for 2 full periods of time, so up to a year. Like, I don't support having it that long, but I do think that even if it bought just a little bit of time and perhaps a lower workload on some of the normal stuff for the planning department, then you know, I think that the city just needs to really invest in this project, because we've known for a while that we needed to fix some things, and I think we're just gonna have to do it. So I for tonight, I will support this, although I want to hear more about the affordable housing. Did we need to add something to that, or is it already in the statute?
As far as as far as
Exempting affordable housing from the moratorium.
It's not directly addressed in the statute. It creates an exemption to an exemption, and that's why this is confusingly written. I would recommend, if we want to be very clear that affordable housing is to be exempted, let's just simply say that. The statute actually defines affordable housing for you already. It refers to a health and code section, so we can refer to that as the definition of affordable housing. And just quickly, that section reads, lower income households mean persons and families whose income does not exceed the qualifying limits for lower income families as established and amended from time to time pursuant to Section 8 of the HUD regs. Lower income households includes very low income households and extremely low income households. So it doesn't exclude moderate or low, but it does include lower and extremely low income households also.
And I mean, I think broadly the capital A, capital H, 100% developments tend to be on the lower than 100% AMI scale, because that's the only way you can get federal funding.
Well, they'd also be exempt as probably more than 1/3 of the property is multifamily housing.
Well, yeah, but I was just talking about affordable housing, so.
Does it matter to you what percent of the project is affordable housing? Does that matter to you, or you just want to defer or basically?
I mean, my assumption, we were talking about 100% affordable.
100%?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's what that was my assumption. I mean, I'm only one member of this body.
Well, I was going with what are the prevailing, I mean, I was doing, you know, income restricted housing, but I don't know, I figured if it was like, you know, if someone wants to build something 50-50, but that's fine, we can go with that.
We could say 50-50, that's fine. We haven't seen a lot of those projects. I mean, it's possible somebody may come along and want to do that, but mostly it's like 20% inclusionary or it's 100% affordable is kind of what I've seen.
Yeah, well, I'm not counting the inclusionary as sort of making
No, I
something
wouldn't.
into a affordable project.
Because at that point, you might as well just exempt all multifamily. Right?
I guess I'm also wondering, I mean, we do have a community of architects and builders that build single-family dwellings. That is a industry here in town, and telling them that none of their clients can complete their projects next year, I don't know that that's good. So if you want to build the truck and auto and get rid of any rule that's subjective, you can. But if you want to build a single-family dwelling, you cannot. I don't know if that's a good outcome. I'm going to say it's not.
I mean, I guess it depends on what you think the future of housing is in Sonoma. If you want to see more single-family homes, then that can be exempted. Or if we want to see, you know, duplexes and triplexes more, then that's what would be exempted by this ordinance.
Right. I guess that's the problem with an urgency ordinance, is that there's not that much time to work it through.
Right.
Well, we do have, since this would have to be extended before the end of the year, a week to a few days to think about it, and if, you know, we could change our mind at the end of the week and decide not to renew it, and then just have 45 days to see what we can do.
Does the ordinance have to be extended exactly the same way it is? Can it be altered at the time of the extension?
That's a good question.
Yes, it could, but not significantly, and that means it would be altered on Friday.
Could we add an exemption?
But I'm just saying, like,
Probably.
if we did it now and we thought if we had some discussions or something by Friday, it doesn't have to be extended in the exact. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just
Yeah, we've shied away from making significant changes for sure. Creating more exemptions, however, probably would not be a problem.
so like a significant change would be including a new category that was
Exempt.
it was part of the moratorium. But what's a significant change? I don't know.
A significant change would be adding a new category of structures or development that would be prohibited.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I mean, for me, my feeling is to support this because our planning director is saying it would be a net benefit for us in the city. And I trust his wisdom on that. And I think that with all the new housing code, that's going to be it's going to be a big issue for us coming forward. And we've known we need to develop our development code for a long time. And so I support this. Do we want to have a motion? David, did you want to say something? I apologize.
Oh, I was just going to say that we have to remember what the end game is here, and you know, these urgency ordinances. It's the new level of government because of the disconnect between the state and the local control and all this. And a lot that you read here doesn't make sense, and the reason it doesn't make sense is because it doesn't make sense. There's no common sense in any of this. Any taxpayer out here who's looking at this would not want to write a check to the government because look at the money that this is costing. Just think of all the affordable housing that could be built by the money that is spent on lawyers and all this, staff time and all this. So to protect the city of Sonoma, I will be supporting this the way that it's written because I understand what the end game is here at the end. And when constituents ask me why, say because there was something that came that we just had to bring the common sense to it. We don't like some of the language in there, but in the end game, we will like all the language because it gives our staff some time to do things. And I do want to make sure that we don't limit time because we could have a flood, an earthquake, or something else that could affect the timing of this, and I just don't want to be caught in that position. So I will be supporting this.
And you said you support it as written, but as written, it doesn't have the affordable housing component. Do you support that being added to the ordinance?
Can I make
exemption?
a clarification about that? All affordable housing that I have seen is multifamily, so it's inherently excluded.
Oh, that's true. That's true. But I would still like it specifically excluded. But I was asking David, is that comfortable for you to keep that as an exclusion?
Oh yeah, no. As it was written, and I understand. What I don't want to do is send staff time back in here to spend more time when in the end game what we're trying to get is on ordinances that aren't subjective. And this will be the end game. And it's going to be a little rough for everyone, and that's why there's no common sense to this. It's becoming the new norm for California, and it's sad, and hopefully this will change.
Great. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, could I
sorry,
make
yeah.
some suggested changes so we make sure we capture the affordability issue that you seem to be focused on?
Yes.
And I think Councilmember Harrington is correct that the exemption for multifamily projects, a third of the square footage of which is devoted to
It covers it. Yeah.
multifamily would cover almost all affordable housing, but might I suggest we use that 1/3, although it's a little bit strange, it's the standard set forth in the code section. We use that again in describing affordable housing projects. I would recommend that the parenthetical that is part of sub E and fair be stricken, and in its place we create a new subsection F that would read, development of multifamily housing that consists of at least 1/3 of the total square footage of the project that is affordable to lower income households as defined in Health and Safety Code section 50079.5, which is the section I just read to you from my cell phone. That would be a new sub F. And then the last existing sub F would be changed to G, accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units.
So I have a question. It sounds like what you just did would block non-affordable multifamily dwelling units.
No.
No, it would not.
No,
We
am I
would
correct?
retain E, which.
Oh, it would retain
we
E.
create-
Oh, okay.
and
I
we
thought you were
add-
striking E.
No,
Okay,
the
great.
we were striking
We're
the
good.
parenthetical.
I got it.
Yeah, we
I
keep
got it.
E.
I thought you were
added-
striking. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Hundley.
Aye.
So close to the gavel.
Councilmember Harrington.
Aye.
Councilmember Agrimonti.
Aye.
Councilmember Cook.
Aye.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Can I request if we are gonna go revisit item 7.2, that we do it before moving on to 7.5, because I have to recuse myself from item 7.5.
Yes, that was my recommendation.
I'm fine with that.
To the mayor as well. So if we're ready to move to that, can we move back to 7.2? So this is a conversation about water connection fees, and there were some questions the council had, so I'll turn it to our consultant, Steve.
Yes, thank you. And while I was in the other room over there, I was able to contact my executive vice president.
Steve, microphone nuts, we can't hear you.
Is it on?
Yeah, you just have to
I
talk
just need to be
closer.
closer. Okay. So while I was in the other room, I was able to talk with my executive vice president, who's been doing this for 4 decades, and he confirmed that we're using the correct methodology. And I mentioned I'm having a little bit of trouble explaining why we don't subtract interest. He offered a lot of the same explanation with maybe a little bit more, and I'm going to try to explain that to you now. So we subtract principal for those assets because the city has not acquired enough equity in those assets. So we subtract that out for that reason. And the assets, those assets that we're talking about that are being paid for by that bond, is already being paid for through your water rates and charges that your future users and future customers will pay for. So we only want them to pay for it once, and it's through water rates. And interest is a future cost. It's a cost for the rent of money that will be paid in the future. So they're going to pay for it in the future as they pay bills over the next years and years and years as that bond is defeased, right? We don't subtract interest, just like I mentioned, because it is a future cost, not a current cost that future users will pay for.
Okay. So I guess the question then is, so of the total cost for subsidizing or for acquiring those assets, for paying them off, that include interest and principal. So does that mean that although the true cost of the money, the past cost, will be solely borne by the users at that time, even though the future users are the beneficiary of the cost of the infrastructure, they're not going to pay that. They're only going to pay it on a go-forward basis.
So those assets, they'll be paid for in the future by the future users, and then every 5 years or so, you should recalculate your capacity fees.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do so, the cost of financing that you mentioned will be calculated in that new valuation. Because we use the ENR, Engineering News Record Construction Cost Index, to value all your assets up from over the past 5 years. And any financing costs would be included in that valuation to put everyone on par. Right? A capacity fee is about making sure everybody buys into the system and everybody pays a fair share for the assets. So every 5 years, you revalue your system to make sure everybody's paying their fair share of those assets. And financing costs would be included in that every 5 years, that new valuation in the capacity fee. But future costs, future interest is paid by your current customers
And
as
where
they pay their bills.
And was that calculation done during our latest water rate study?
Yes, it was done in 2018. It's a snapshot in time, so this is an imperfect fee, right? But it's close enough. You do it every so years, every 5 years. You add stuff to your system every 5 years. Then you take a snapshot in time. You say, what's the value of the system? You charge a capacity fee. You let time go on. You take another snapshot in time. You change your capacity fee every 5 years or so. You could, in the meantime, you could also just hit your capacity fee with what's known as the construction cost index by the Engineering News Record. So that changes every year. Let's say it goes up 3% in the past year. You could take this capacity fee that we calculated for you and just adjust it by the ENR CCI.
Which is the current value of constructing it from scratch?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Also, another way of looking at it, and it was alluded to earlier, is that when you have your own home, you talk about how much equity you have in your home. You never subtract from the value the principal plus all the future interest that you may owe over the balance of your 30-year mortgage. You never do that. You just subtract the principal, and that gives you the equity that you actually can go out and borrow against also in the second deed of trust, for example.
The forward going, I understand, it's just the past of what's already been paid by current ratepayers. How do you spread that out over other people who have received the benefit of having that money improve the system? And maybe it's taken care of with that 5-year look, or maybe it's not. I don't know. I'm not sure I understand that part of it, but okay.
Well,
Don't hook up in the 5th year.
Yeah, it's fine.
So I've never had that question, and I'll be prepared for it next time. Thank you.
Thank you. That's making me feel so smart. Great.
The good news is I heard her say, okay.
Anyway.
So do we need a motion on this one?
Yeah, just one other question. There was also the question of what was the purpose of the bond?
yeah.
And again, this was,
okay.
so
So the original bond was done in 2001, and it was for various water improvements. It was a revenue bond. And then in 2012, it was refinanced. So the original amount of the first bond was $2,250,000, and then the second one was $1,650,000, which is the one that was put into the calculation. So,
thank you, Sue.
So the item in front of you was to hold the public hearing and then take an action to approve the fee resolution.
So do we have a motion on item 7.2?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote?
Vice Mayor Hundley.
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington.
Aye.
Councilmember Agrimonti.
Aye.
Councilmember Cook.
Aye.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
All right. So on to item 7.5.
Can I just ask, when am I supposed to recuse myself?
I think the point would be to, yes, you can recuse yourself now, and then Mayor Harvey will introduce the item.
Oh, okay, great. So with regard to cell phone ordinances and towers, there is a proposed cell phone tower to be built across the street from my house. I have requested formal advice from the FPPC with the assistance of our city attorney's office, and they have told me that I am not allowed to vote on anything relating to cell phones, or not this ordinance, and so I am going to recuse myself. I think that's fair. And I think that's it. I'm going to leave after this because it was my last day being mayor. I will be at the Swiss Hotel. If anyone would like to join me, please do.
Shortly. All right. So we are on to item 7.5, holding a public hearing to discuss, consider, and take action to waive further reading, introduce by title only, and conduct first reading of an ordinance to repeal Chapter 5.30 of Sonoma Municipal Code and add new Chapter 5.30 regulations for wireless telecommunication, and finding this action to be exempt from CEQA. Bringing it over to Mr. Storr.
Thank you, Mayor Harvey, council members. David Storr with staff, and to my right is Mr. Abachi from legal counsel. Tonight before you we have about 7 slides. We'll do them very quickly because the reason I can do that is because we actually are changing out a portion of our code that's been in place for about a year. So last November we adopted an urgency ordinance with respect to wireless telecommunication facilities, and you want to close the door? No. Oh. No. Okay. So we're adding a new section of our municipal code to deal with wireless telecommunication facilities that will be replacing an urgency ordinance that's been in place since November of last year. Next. We basically have a municipal code that had regulations that date back to 1996 that really dealt with cell towers, and it also does not address wireless telecommunication facilities in the public right-of-way. And we're also adopting this new ordinance, or the urgency ordinance, which we're now making permanent, to address FCC regulations and orders that they've adopted. Next. What we've done in this provision is provided for a hierarchy of preferred locations. So what we've done, which is different from the current ordinance, is rather than having a ban, or if you will, or the effect of banning them in residential or whatever, not prohibited outright, but we've created a hierarchy of preferred locations with respect to having an applicant look in commercial areas first to place these cell tower facilities. And then as you can see there, we've got the hierarchy there, but I think I've interposed the prod and residential. But what we've done is added a component that's new to the ordinance that allows us to get applications and have those costs paid for those applications through our own use of consultants. We've retained a 1,500-foot separation between facilities, regardless of where they go, whether in the commercial or residential. Next. We've retained the ability to have a use permit for cell towers in our public rights of way. And we've retained the piece where we have appeals go to our city council from the planning commission. Next. Our recommendation tonight is to adopt the ordinance, and we will then be able to return for a second reading on January the 13th of next year. This concludes staff's report. Mr. Abachi and I are here to answer questions on the ordinance if you have them.
Just a quick correction. Tonight would be to introduce the ordinance and then later to adopt it.
Do you have questions from council? No? All right. Seeing none, we'll bring it out to public comment.
Good evening, Lynn Marie DeVincent, 65 Guadalajara. Congratulations, Mayor Harvey and Vice Mayor Hundley. And I wish I could have thanked Amy for her work, because she's been a good guide on this cell tower project. So we are I represent the Sonoma Neighbors for Safe Tech, and we are in support of this ordinance. We've been tracking its evolution and feel that the city staff has done an excellent job. And we're glad the project is ready for your review now. The city manager, planning commission, city attorney, and planning director David Storer have worked diligently to move this forward. So we thank everyone who's been involved. Thank you.
I'm Mark Marthaler, Sonoma, California. Just want to say thanks. It's been a really interesting journey to this point. Really happy with the ordinance, and really unique town. Earlier, this whole thing was like a really a great thing to be here for. Anyway, as far as the ordinance goes, hope it goes through. Thanks.
Anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Go ahead, Councilmember Hundley.
Thank you. Again, this particular meeting is when we get all the things out the door that we've been trying to work on for a long time. And this is certainly an issue that I know everyone's been grappling with, particularly the Planning Commission and staff. And it, at times felt like we wouldn't be able to get to a place that we could feel pretty good about, and I'm just thankful for David Storer's hard work and John Abachi, because you guys have been putting in a lot of hard work for that, and for the members of the community who've been participating with this one and advocating. I appreciate you guys too. It's a collective effort.
All right. Any other comments? I also want to appreciate the work of staff. I know this was a really long slog and a lot of work done by yourself, David, and you, Mr. Abachi. I appreciate you coming on and helping us out here. Fantastic job. I'm really pleased to see the support from two members of our community who really came out and were working on this a lot and put a lot of time and effort into it. I saw the art piece that you brought into the Planning Commission. I thought that was fantastic. Very much enjoyed that. So it's good news, and that's really great to hear. So I'm very pleased to vote for this and glad that it has the support of some of our most concerned community members. So thank you. Great job. So we need a motion on this item.
My iPad is dead.
Okay. You can say so moved though, right?
So moved.
There you go.
Second.
All right. Roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Hundley.
Aye.
Councilmember Agrimonti.
Aye.
Councilmember Cook.
Aye.
Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries 401.
Yay. All right. So now it's time for council member reports and comments. Does anybody have reports or comments?
No, none from
No.
me.
No. I have a report. I'm on the Sonoma County Transit Authority, and just kind of want to make the rest of the council aware that we're starting to have discussions about the future of Measure M. Previous funding had 20% for new streets and roads, 20% for potholes repair, 40% for Highway 101 funding, 5% for SMART, 4% for bike ped, and 1% for administrative fees. The 40% for the Highway 101 is no longer necessary. The project's fully funded, so we have 40% there that's kind of floating. We have additional 5% that used to go to SMART that's also floating. So there's about 45% that's available to go into new areas of the fund. My predilection is to push it into public transit, but I just want there's a lot of support on the board for that. So just want to make people aware, something to noodle over, and happy to talk to whoever about that. So there you go. On to any other announcements? No? City manager?
So the only only update we have is the council chambers ad hoc committee to look at some physical upgrades to this building, not this building, this room, and our some of our conference rooms, smaller conference rooms on the side. That subcommittee has been Councilmember Agrimonti and Mayor Harvey. So our city clerk has been staffing that, and so I think the subcommittee wanted to just give a brief update to the committee, because there's an opportunity for us to start work here in January.
You want me to talk, or you want to talk? Yeah, I forgot about that. Silly. So we've been working with a design company or a painting company to kind of rework the council chambers. Rebecca's really done a fantastic job with that. We've got a darker wood color and then a nice kind of off-white that's going in there. And then we met with Bonnie, who's a local photographer here, to do kind of new photography. It'd be nice to bring some color and some different views of Sonoma into the room. So Rebecca, if you want to take it away and show the pictures that we have. Do we have those here? Oh, great. So the wood staining is, you can see there, and then the painting. And the paneling that we have here, I've been informed we can paint that paneling. Yes, dark mahogany. It says it right there, dark mahogany. So if you're wondering, if you're looking at your house saying, how can I make it as beautiful as the future council chambers? Here you go. Yeah. And so these are the renderings. These were kind of our favorite, was these big kind of panoramic pictures for back there and then along the walls. So we've discussed it. There'll be new photos, and we'll be able to kind of
What's going behind us?
too. Nothing right now. Work in progress. We don't have enough money to add stuff behind us.
We need a big seal.
There's been discussions of a seal. Yeah.
May I add something?
Not an animal mascot.
We, just if I can add a couple of comments,
Please
Mayor
do.
Harvey. We had talked about that, Councilmember Hundley, as far as the backdrop and what it would look like with you guys on video. And one of the things that we did identify, because we are limited in funding, and one of the things we did identify is painting the doors. So the door behind you will be the same color as the walls to make it disappear. We'll be moving the flags around and moving the coat rack out. And then some of the things we've discussed for possibly a phase 2 in the next coming fiscal year is possibly a sill done and attached to the front of the dais. There's a couple of things we've looked at, maybe some banners behind you, really keeping in mind that you don't want to lose you in the background. So those are some things that we've looked at. We really looked at some different colors and woods and paint in here. Some of the ability to take it, completely stain it. You know, we had to really look at that and the costs associated with it. So these were the ones, we looked at several colors and several color palettes, and this was the agreed one that everyone liked.
Yeah, thank you. And I really do want to appreciate the work of Rebecca. She really put herself into this, and luckily it's something she loves to do. So it was a lot of fun, and working with Madeline as well is always a joy. So excited to bring forward. Sounds like you guys kind of like it or don't care. So both ways it works. Great, great. Well, you know, either way it's a win. So great. I think we'll move forward. Thank you. City Attorney, you want to talk about paint? No? All right, cool. Let's move on. Is that the end? Do we say meeting's adjourned?
You need to announce the meeting's adjourned to Friday, December 20th at 11 a.m.
Oh, yes, we will be adjourning this meeting until Friday, December 20th at 11 a.m.